you miss me? I've been out of it comatose, but the depression is over.
Hello and welcome to Controlled Burns, the weekly hobby list podcast for me, SlowBurne from Wildfire Gaming. I'm joined for the first time this week by my brother Brandon to submit yet another top 25 game on the show. Brandon, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
This should be an interesting list because it's definitely one that I think I've had a lot of influence on. But while Brandon has spent a lot of time playing games of his life, he hasn't really played a lot of them. Instead, he kind of goes pretty deep on the ones that he does play. He like replays a lot.
That is true.
So these are definitely going to be some vetted choices. Definitely, he's put his time in on these selections. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. Before we go any further, just to remind you that Controlled Burns is a weekly hobby list podcast with a particular focus on lists and topics related to video games, music, TV, and film, as well as other hobbies and aspects of pop culture. If you're interested in writing into the podcast and having your comments or questions right on air, you can write into the podcast at ControlledBurnes with an ES at gmail.com. Now, Brandon made this list with me a few months ago, and it's been a while since he looked at it. So he actually doesn't remember exactly what the order is, but he won't probably be too surprised by what's on here. But number 25 was kind of the cutoff because you did it in the where you're like, you obviously had your 10s, your 975s, your 9.5s, and then I think you had room for one 925. And you had to pick which one it was. And the one that you chose was Metroid Fusion.
Metroid Fusion.
Yeah, and I think this is the only game on the list that I have not finished myself. I've only played like the beginning. So I was curious, how did you get into wanting to play Metroid Fusion? Was this the first one in the series that you played?
Yeah, I think maybe since Dad just thought Metroid was cool.
Yeah, he did.
And he just thought it would be a cool game for me to have on the Game Boy.
And he just bought it for you?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because he got me, I don't remember why, but there was one time where I had been somewhere, and I don't remember where I had been, but it was like I was coming home and like these games that he had got for me were waiting for me. And it was Ratchet and Clank 1 and Metroid Prime 1.
Yeah.
And for some reason he like lied basically and said that he played through all of Ratchet and Clank without me.
Yeah.
And then he said that he also played some Metroid Prime, but he just started it. And that is true because there was a save on my GameCube.
That is
Like he thought it
crazy.
was cool enough that he actually did start it. I don't know why he said that about Ratchet and Clank, but
It is cool. It had a cool case, you know?
yeah, it did. And I think this was like early, like because our mom was really, well, particularly for me. I mean, I don't think you had as bad as I did, but she was really strict with me about what games I could play. And like when I actually became a teenager, then is when I could actually play teen games. And so I think he got a kick out of that. And so it was just like buying a bunch of them at that time.
And see that a lot of games don't really need that teen rating.
Yeah, me and Brandon got like, we could do like probably a whole podcast just talking about the ESRB and like putting out some ones that don't really make any sense.
It's all messed up.
Yeah, like we would try to talk to mom and be like, look, this one says mild, like Ratchet and Clank's an example. It was like, that one said mild violence. And I remember, I think it was Digimon Rumble Arena. It just said violence on the back. And I was like, well, Mom, what is worse, violence or mild violence? She said, well, mild violence would be less bad because that's what mild means. And I was like, well, then how do you make this make any sense?
It doesn't make any sense.
And she was like, well, I don't know what to tell you.
And they were just screwing us.
Yeah, left and right. And also, at least whenever you were a kid, you had the E10, but I didn't even have that.
Right.
Yeah, that allowed you
I
to play,
remember
like,
that first
Shadow.
came out though. The E10.
Yeah, it was like, I think it was like around when Shadow the Hedgehog came out.
Yeah, because I remember when Melee came out, and that was teen. That was
Oh my God. I remember seeing Melee in the store and being like, holy crap. Because you know the cover looks amazing.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, I sure wish I could play that.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I had to go over to Matt Fisher's house to play it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this was just something that Dad randomly got for you. So you never played any of the other ones.
Yeah, and I never really spent that much time into Fusion either. I feel like as a kid, because I could never really figure it out.
Yeah, right.
So I never really got that far. But just recently, I mean, obviously there's one time where I just kind of went through and
Didn't you use like a video?
A guide, and went through it, and I really enjoyed doing that. But just recently, when I got my new Game Boy Advance, I was just looking for Game Boy Advance games to play.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
and you have like, because we have like, and you in particular have a pretty good, well, not great, but a large Game Boy Advance collection.
Yes, very large. Some good ones that I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fusion is one of them. It sure is fun. I think it's more fun than I think it's better than Super Metroid.
Yeah, I was gonna ask
all
because
the
like this
others.
is obviously you have it the highest of any of the Metroid games, but
So-
you've played Super Metroid, and then what? Did you play Zero Mission?
I never played
Okay,
it.
so mostly just Metroid Fusion and
Yeah.
Super Metroid. They're very similar, but Metroid Fusion kind of has like doesn't it have like a little bit more of like a story element.
Yeah, it does. It's pretty interesting. It's not like the best thing in the world, but
Yeah.
it's pretty good. And I just love that. I just love like the where it takes place in that game, like the space station.
Oh yeah, here in a
And
station.
every environment looks unbelievably different because
Mm.
it's like fire, the fire area, the grass area, and water area and everything. Like every area looks completely different from each other, and it's just very easy to like just really get into that place, that space station.
Yeah, and it has like really good atmosphere. Do you think like I know Brayden's not like the biggest Nintendo fan in the world outside of some key examples. So is Metroid? Do you think that's your favorite Nintendo series?
Yeah, I mean probably. I mean, what else would there even be?
Well, yeah, I mean he's not like a huge Zelda fan. Hates Mario.
Exactly.
Um, I mean Mario Kart you like,
Yeah.
but and of course Smash Bros.
Yeah, probably it probably would be Metroid, my favorite that they've like just done
Yeah.
themselves, Nintendo.
Yeah, and it's just like one that goes back really far, has a lot of history. I definitely, recently, in the last few years, I did this thing where I played through all the Zelda games, pretty much. I mean, I haven't finished Tears of the Kingdom because it's insanely huge. And then now they have a new one that came out last year where you played Zelda, and obviously I haven't played that. But I played all the others leading up to it. And I want to do that with the Metroid games too, but it's that wouldn't take anywhere near as long probably because there's nowhere near as many Metroid games.
Right, yeah.
But that is a series that I've always thought was like really cool. I have not played, like I said, Metroid Fusion all the way, but I have played Metroid One, just the original on the NES Classic, and then Super Metroid on the SNES Classic.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all I played. And I've started Metroid Fusion, and the only reason I think I didn't keep going with that was because I also had a copy of it. We had physical copies of them for Game Boy Advance, but your save still works and my save doesn't work
Yeah.
on my
it's
game.
that-
And so like I had like put, so a little bit, it wasn't like I was super far, but I'd played an hour or two. And then next time I turned it on, it was just new game. And I was like, well, I guess that's that.
That'll ruin a playthrough for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, so Metro Fusion. Forgot. Oh, one last thing I want to say about Metro Fusion. It actually came out the same day as Metroid Prime. Isn't that
Yeah,
crazy?
it is awesome.
That is like such an insane day for
Two
that
bangers
series.
right off the bat.
Yeah, I think they were both on like the top 200 games when Game Informer did them back then. It's like, man, that was a crazy good day for that series.
And what year did that?
It's 2002.
2002. Dang. it's a
Yeah,
long
that was
time
like
ago.
they hadn't like made any Metroid games I think since Super Metroid really.
Right. That was like
And
the
then
last
so it was
one.
like a long time
Mhm.
because that came out the year I was born, 94. And then yeah, they had like a long gap and then they were just like, well, here's two of them ready to go. So okay, number 24, you have Crash Team Racing.
Oh man,
Yeah.
glorious game.
Yeah, so we have a lot of memories. I, in particular, have a lot of memories playing this as a kid. It goes all the way back to before I even had a PS1. I remember there was one time where, Cade's mom she taught in the elementary school, like kind of in the same hallway mom did. She was like at the very end, like that. You look at that door all the way at the end.
Yeah.
And so I remember going over there, kind of like it was instead of we would always go to mom's classroom after school, but this was like before school started. They had to go a little bit early, like in the summer.
hmm
But back in those days, we would just go with them. We would just go with her because like it wasn't like we could just like be doing something while she was just like getting her stuff ready
Right.
or whatever. And so, but Cade's mom was also a teacher, and so I remember I went. He brought his PS1, and we wheeled one of those TVs down there. And so we had a PS1 set up in his mom's classroom, and I remember playing Crash Team Racing. So that's like the earliest that I had, and that was like it was that and Spyro Year of the Dragon that was like, man, I got to get a PS1.
Yeah.
But for you, what do you remember? Because like eventually you had your own copy and you had your own PS1, but
Yeah. So I didn't get that into Crash Team Racing, I think, heavily until I got that PS2 Slim.
hmm,
And I bought that PS2 Slim. And then at some point, I think I just decided that Crash Team Racing was awesome, and I just wanted to buy it for myself.
yeah.
So I think I bought like just a PS1 copy off Amazon or something, and was playing it on there. And yeah, it's just like one of the best kart racers ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool how it had like the adventure mode, which
hmm
is like not. I think maybe Diddy Kong Racing had it as well, but like it wasn't really like when you played Mario Kart, like you didn't have that. So
Yeah.
that was really cool. And a weird thing for us was our dad got really like he did not get into games, but every once in a while he would. And like Crash Team Racing, I've never seen him. That's like the most into a game he ever was.
Yeah.
He just played the crap out of Crash Team Racing.
It's so good.
He was an engine fan.
Yeah, Engine fan. He
Yeah.
also liked Dingadile.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I thought they were funny. Yeah, he just like played that adventure mode like over and over, and he would do everything. He would get the time trials, get the
Yeah.
Crash Team Racing tokens.
Yeah, it's fun as just going through the story mode, but it's also fun with people. It is a little less fun maybe than Mario Kart because it's more Mario Kart is so much more casual.
Yeah, definitely.
But Crash Team Racing, like once you get into like the mechanics,
Yeah,
it
it's
is
his a high ceiling.
yeah. But once if you're into it, like once you get into it, like it is super fun. It feels really rewarding to like
Yeah,
get some fast races and stuff. And the shortcuts too. I think the shortcuts in Crash Team Racing are just way better than Mario Kart.
yeah. I think probably is maybe the best of
Yeah.
any game I've seen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. And even the PS1 one had really good shortcuts, and they also had some shortcuts that were unintended
Yeah.
that were just as awesome as the intended ones.
Yeah, there were some that were you could change your strategy, like what's that, the Skyway, whatever.
Yeah, the
There was like
Hot Air
this,
Skyway.
yeah, there was like this wall, there was like this divider. It was like a crazy track, but they would like one side of it would kind of go right next to the other side, and there was just a tiny little wall separating them. And you couldn't, if you're just driving on the wall, like you couldn't jump over anything. But if it kind of went down after that, like it
Yeah.
had like a little hill. So if you turned around and jumped off the hill, you could get.
Yeah.
It took a little bit of practice. You could like jump over the wall.
Yeah.
And then you could skip like half the track.
Yeah, just stuff like that. Oxide Station has another
Oh,
crazy
yeah.
another crazy shortcuts in it. And yeah,
Yeah, Oxide Station. That was crazy level design right there.
I still like to watch people play that game when they're doing really well.
Yeah, and it's
speed run.
crazy because like Naughty Dog had never really they were not known for those kind of
Mhm.
games, which of course neither was Nintendo when they made Mario Kart. So it's not like that. I mean, that was just kind of more of a thing in the 90s.
Yeah.
People would just like experiment and do different things. But the fact that they made it that good and that was that hardcore, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Super Smash Bros. Melee, where it's like I don't know, they were really trying to make it like this hardcore thing.
I know, yeah, I know. I don't know if they were, but they really, it goes deep.
Yeah,
Crash Team Racing.
yeah, it does. And then we kind of got back into it. I remember. I think I was in college. Maybe there was like a period where we got back into it, and then when me and Brandon would hang out, we'd be like, "Well, you want to go through the cups?"
Yeah.
and we just play them because it doesn't take that long.
I know that they were so fun.
And then Crash Nitro Kart or whatever race Nitro Fueled
Yeah,
came
Crash Team
out,
Racing
and
Nitro
then
Fueled.
you have like hundreds of hours on that.
Oh yeah, I love that game just as much as the original.
Yeah, this kind of counts in this spot.
Yeah, it does for sure.
And you like got into like trying to go for like the developer times.
Yeah, the
so.
developer times are ridiculously hard in that game.
Yeah,
I've probably done about half of them.
yeah.
But yeah.
And then you can play online, which to me, I haven't tried to play online in a long time. I assume it's not as easy to do these days. But when it first came out, it was pretty awesome being able to just play with a bunch of people.
Yeah, I think it's still going as of now, but
That was like that was one of the things that I was like really excited about when it came out. Like I was really excited about Spyro coming back. Like I thought it was cool that the Crash games were coming back because they did those first, and then I wasn't even 100% sure I was gonna get that right away, but I did get it pretty early and ended up having a lot of fun playing them. And then Spyro, of course, I was really excited about that and got it immediately. And then Crash Team Racing, I was like, well, this is like the dream of being able to play it online.
it
with
really was
a
the
bunch of
dream
people
when that came
because
out.
we had like practiced, we were
Yeah.
ready to go.
I'm sad that they didn't keep working on it, and it sucks that there's no like ports of it or anything because it really needs like the loading times in the remake
Yeah,
and
are
Nitro
really
Fuel.
long.
They're rough, especially
even
for-
on PS5.
like if you go watch speed runs of the game, they have to like say like
for them.
yeah, like without loading times,
Yeah.
it's this amount of time, and then like with loading times, it's like 2 hours more. Like it's crazy.
Man, that's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, number 23, similar to Crash Team Racing, because what we were talking about is Super Smash Bros. Melee.
Yeah, very, very fun.
Yeah, what did you... So this is another one where I wasn't sure exactly when you got into it, because I already mentioned for me, I went over and played it at Matthew Fisher's house for the first time I played it, and that was kind of crazy because he had like, what is it, 3 sisters, I guess, and like they would all like play, and so like they would do like the tournament mode and like just with like 64 NPCs or
Tournament mode is so cool to have that built in.
yeah. But what about you? When did, because obviously I got it eventually, but
Yeah, I mean, I remember playing it, just messing around some of it with just as a kid, just with you. But I never really got super into it. I liked that Mewtwo was in it because I thought Mewtwo
Right.
was super awesome. But yeah, I didn't really get into it until we were in high school, and all my friends just started getting into the competitive stuff.
That is so crazy. So it was there somebody that like got into it first? Like
I feel like I don't know. They had those laptops for
oh yeah, for school.
yeah, for school, and they just were looking for something to play, I think, all the time,
Okay.
and they just settled on Melee, and they started watching a bunch of competitive stuff and started trying to like, just be like that,
Yeah.
trying to be as good as that. And yeah, we just spent hours and hours at school, after school, before band, like all the time. Just
And you played them on those little laptops?
yeah, we played on the
Oh,
laptop.
interesting.
Anywhere we could, we would play. But
Yeah, because what I remembered was that didn't you like utilize that old CRT that we had,
yeah, we used that a lot at the house in
the physical
Leonard.
copy.
Yeah,
That was my copy.
and we also went to Josiah's a lot because he had a big old CRT that we'd
Oh
play on
yeah,
a lot.
but it always had to be a CRT, so no lag.
That's right, no lag, no input delay.
Yeah, because I remember while this was happening, I guess because I was in college while you were in high school. So like I remember you got really into like the competitive, and then like you just were, well, while you guys were doing it, but you also just got interested in like the scene with like all the guys.
Yeah,
Like who are they? Like Lachlan?
Mewtwo King.
Oh no, Lachlan was the Pokemon Go
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
It was who's that guy that was like the villain?
Oh, Leffen.
Yeah, Leffen. That's
Yeah,
it.
good
Yeah,
old Leffen.
yeah,
Mewtwo King, Hungry Box, Mango.
yeah, Mango. Yeah.
All those people.
And there was like the Smash documentary.
The Smash documentary.
And you
is a
got
great
Brandon to it
documentary.
as well.
I
Like
know.
he didn't like really play like you guys did, but he was interested in just like the
I
competitive
know,
stuff.
and just watching matches sometimes are super intriguing because people
Yeah.
have good comebacks the last second.
Yeah, it's just like crazy, like just kind of hardcore mechanics in that game, unlike the rest of the series.
Unlike the rest, yeah, it's kind of hard to explain unless you watch it.
Yeah,
but
it's just like really fast. Even at the time, I knew it was fast. Like,
Yeah.
because Brawl came out next, and it was like not even close as bad.
Yeah.
And that was the one that honestly, because I played a lot of Melee back in the day, like whenever it was the newest game. Obviously I played, and I had a GameCube. I played it a decent amount, and I remember we would try to do the challenges. Like there's like they had like a challenge mode where it was like they would just set up like a specific match for you, and you had to complete it. Remember one of them was called Hot Date on Brinstar.
Oh yeah.
But like I don't know, like, and then like I can't remember like a lot of like what you had to do, but there was like 50 of them, and some of them were like really tough. And so I remember that was like a thing at school where it'd be like, oh man, did you finish? We would like try to compare how if we'd been able to do those challenges.
And you had to do all those too if you wanted to unlock everyone.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly, the one that I ended up playing the most was Brawl. I think you remember the hype cycle for Brawl?
Yeah, it was
crazy.
unbelievable.
One of the craziest ever, because like they would do this thing where they had a website set up, and they would release a new piece of information literally every day. They'd be like, here's a new song, or here's a new character, or here's a new mechanic, or here's a new stage, or whatever. And like they would just like pace it out like that, which was super crazy and good idea. We were like super into the hype for it.
I know. I remember the day they showed the Pokemon trainer for the first
Oh
time.
yeah,
Charizard and all his moves.
yeah, well, see, that's funny because what I remember, well, I definitely remember every time they would put up a song, it was like a huge deal. Like they did the Zelda Ocarina of Time medley or whatever. We are like, wow, this is incredible. Or like the piano version of the Mario theme.
Yeah.
They did, that was really good. But the detail I remember the most, where they were like really talking about this interesting detail, was Diddy Kong shooting the peanuts, and then like every once in a while it would crack and like a nut would come out and you could eat it for some extra health. I just remember them talking about that.
Yeah.
But whenever I was in high school, that was the newest one, and so because I was in high school 2009 to 2012, so it came out in 08. And so like about senior in particular, every day after school, Gavin Dalton came over, and that's mostly what we did, was we played Brawl. So we just did the same amount. But for you, you never got into Brawl as much as Melee.
No, I did when it first came out. I was on the hype train. I did play it a lot, but whenever we went back in high school and everyone started looking at like competitive players and everything, and we were playing Melee, like something just kind of unlocked, and we just kind of all just got super into
the Melee.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, it's an awesome one. Definitely one of the great fighting games for sure. Okay, number 22, his first entry in this series is Pokemon Black and White.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Black and White.
Interesting choice. So, what did you think? I think one of the things. So, I definitely, you played Black, I think, before me. I think Brett actually played it first between the three of us. I think he might actually play it first.
Well, actually, you might be right on that.
He played it like pretty fast, and he did it like insanely quickly.
I think we got it kind of closer on the same time.
Yeah, we did.
You and Brett were in Terrell, I think, and I ended up with a copy, I think.
Yeah, Dad bought us copies.
Yeah.
Or maybe you might have actually bought a copy and then he had also bought you one and didn't realize that you'd already got one. That might be how I got mine.
Yeah.
But to me, when I finally did play it, especially for the time, because this is back whenever it was the newest and we hadn't had like Cinnamon or anything. But like at the time, it was like kind of like the high quality storytelling for Pokemon standards versus the others.
Very, very much true. Yeah, especially coming off Diamond and Pearl.
That's true. So like we played pretty much all of them as they came out. I mean,
Yeah.
Brandon, he was born in '98, so obviously he wasn't, he was like literally an infant when the originals came out. But you still played them, when you were a kid. When you
Well,
grew up a little
I
bit.
still ended up with Blue version first.
Yeah, see, I didn't. I actually had Gold first.
Yeah, you said you thought that Blue came out after.
Yeah,
so-
because I knew about Gold and Silver first, and then I saw like I would go to the store. Because back then you gotta understand, and there's a good example is what I was talking about with our Final Fantasy, our Final Fantasy like PS1 collection. Like our copies of Final Fantasy 8 and 9 had say Square Enix on it. Well, I didn't merge it and have it until like 2002.
Right. Yeah.
But that's because back then games just had a really long shelf. If they were successful,
Yeah.
games had a really long shelf life, like
Not like
multiple
today's.
years. Like remember seeing Mario Kart DS, for instance, and
Still
years
full
and
price.
years. Yeah. So like if a game was successful, they would stick around in the stores for a long time, especially if you went to like GameStop and stuff where obviously they had more space. But even like in Walmart, like if it was a successful game, it would stay around for many years. And so I just remember going to this, even though I already had Gold, I would go to the store and see Red and Blue, and I was like, wow, this looks like a new. We didn't have like Game Informer or like internet or anything. We
No.
just were just like whatever we saw, we were like, oh wow, this is and this I guess there's a new Pokemon game because here it is.
Yeah.
And so I got Red and Blue after Gold and Silver, and I was like, man, this one doesn't look as good as.
Yeah.
Gold
Why
and
does it
Silver.
look so much worse?
But I only had a black and white Game Boy at that time, so
It's hard to
It was
tell.
still black and white.
Yeah.
I just didn't think the sprites were as good,
Yeah.
which they weren't. But then obviously, ever since then, Ruby and Sapphire, we played them all as they came out, and we liked. I mean, we haven't really played the new ones, but I guess through Sun and Moon.
Yeah.
And then Sword and Shield, I played when it came out. And you played a little, but you didn't finish it.
Well, I got to the very end.
Yeah, but it wasn't like you played it like right away.
No, not right.
But that was kind of the end of that. But for a couple decades there, we played them as they came out. And Black and White was one where I definitely didn't play it as quickly. It wasn't like a day one play.
And I felt that too. Like when it came out, it was kind of like, I don't know if I'll get it. Well, I don't know if I'll get this one. We'll just kind of see what it's like. And yeah, I
Yeah.
started looking at YouTube videos on it, and I was like, okay, I think I got to get this game.
Yeah, see, I went into it like blind. I remember turning it on for the first time, and it has like that cutscene.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this a Pokemon game?
It's very out there. For
Yeah.
Pokemon.
It's like looks like some Final Fantasy thing or something. It's
Yeah.
like this castle and just like these people, hailing the king or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
it
like,
really
wow,
does.
I don't know what's going on here. But yeah, so that was a big standout. Obviously, with the character of Vin, like they kind of were going for some things in the story. That was pretty interesting. But I think that entry is also kind of known for like I feel like that was the first time where it was kind of the controversial Pokemon designs. Where
Yeah.
people were like had some issues like with the ice cream Pokemon and the
Yeah,
garbage.
and I kind of was maybe worried about that for a little bit before I started playing it. But then I think once I started watching gameplay of it, and then I got the game and I started playing it, I was like, this might be the best one.
Yeah, I think at the time we generally like when it was like that was the newest generation. I think there was a period where we were like, "Is this the best one?"
Yeah.
Like we were definitely. It's hard to remember now because like I definitely don't think that now. But at the time, like I was like, "Man, this could be the best one."
I know. I really thought that too.
Or at the very least, it was like right there with the best one.
Uh-huh.
It was like a small gap between them. Yeah.
It was super cool that they had a whole new 150 and you can only use those.
Yeah, that was a bold move that they've really never done since.
No,
That
never
part
gone
of it, I
back to
think,
that.
might be laziness on their part, where they don't even want to make that many, new ones every time they
Probably.
come out with a new game. But yeah, that was like because in every other Pokemon game, they would come out with a lot of new Pokemon, and they would try to highlight those for sure. Like Gold, well, honestly, Gold and Silver, like I don't know, they were still. I would say they had equal billing with the old ones.
Yeah.
Because like you go to that first route and it's Pidgey and also Centric,
Yeah.
and Hoodoo.
That's right.
Whereas like and Rattata. Whereas and Ruby and Sapphire, like they definitely wanted you to use the new ones. Like they definitely front loaded those.
Yeah, they really did.
But later on in the game, you could find like some older ones.
Mhm.
Of course, you got your Geodudes and your Zubats. Couldn't possibly have a cave that Zubat.
And Diamond and Pearl is pretty mixed with.
Yeah, Diamond and Pearl, I felt like they had that it was pretty mixed. I think they did a good job of like mixing it in both those games. But then Black and White, they were like, yeah, well, we're just going back to. And I think that was a little bit of a barrier to entry for some people because like they had to just learn a whole bunch of new Pokemon.
That's right.
And so they didn't like how some of them looked, but in my experience, and I think you would agree, going back to those games now, like you can make some I would say high quality team building with the black and white.
Yeah. Some of the designs are a little strange, but
Yeah.
I feel like I ended up liking most of them.
Yeah, I don't
a
remember
lot.
like really disliking Pokemon that I used.
And also, I just feel like the 150 that they made, it's like very well balanced for that game.
Yeah, they did a good job with like balancing all the different types.
And a lot of things are useful. It's like so many good Pokemon.
Yeah, that's the thing is like because back in the day, like with Red and Blue, like there were like the Pokemon designs were excellent, but there was especially like in the original version, like not talking about Fire Red and Leaf Green, but like in the original version, there were definitely good Pokemon and bad Pokemon.
And even up to like Gen 3 and stuff, like you love Disc and stuff.
Yeah,
like-
exactly. But in Black and White, it really felt like you really could use anything, and
Yeah.
you would work out.
Yeah, your team will be good enough.
Yeah, because I remember like using like the electric bug thing in my Galvantula in my first one, and like I used the Muna,
Yeah,
and
the Musharna.
and yeah, I think that was like there was like a period where I really liked to randomize my teams, which I don't do as much anymore now. I pretty much just pick the ones I want to use, but back then I would randomize a lot, and with Black and White it was a good one for randomizing.
It really is, yeah.
And I think I will say part of maybe what's going on with the controversy, and I do kind of agree with this, is I think I did think it was a little bit of a step down in terms of the way they presented just the art style, I think.
Oh yeah, it doesn't
Because like if you go back to like Gen 3 and Gen 4 in particular, like man, those games still look really good. Like, high quality.
I
pixel
agree.
art.
I think Diamond and Pearl and Platinum look and Heart Gold Soul Silver, they
Yeah.
look so good.
They look crazy good. Whereas like Gen 5, they're kind of trying to. It was like the last one before they went 3D with the 3DS with like the fully 3D models, and so like they kind of try to make them like that where they're always moving and stuff, and it's like very jagged.
Yeah,
And
the
I don't
pixels
like
are
it as
very
much.
yeah.
And even like just like the way your character looks and stuff, like it's just more jaggedy than the pixel work of
Yeah.
the Gen 4.
I agree with it, but I also think it kind of has its own charm because none of the other games are really like that.
That's true. It definitely stands out as like a very unique Pokemon game.
And it doesn't bother me too much because I've spent so much of my life playing Blue and Red. So
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a good point.
they look terrible.
Yeah, no question about it. Yeah. So, and then another thing that was kind of interesting that I should bring up about Black and White is that they had direct sequels, Black and White 2,
That's
which
right.
you never played, right?
Never went all the way through. No.
I only did it very recently, like in the last year or year and a half. I did it. And they retread a lot of the same ground. One thing that's kind of interesting about the region design of Black and White is like the region is really big, and so you can probably go through a little bit more than half of it, but like there's still like a good chunk of like the oval, like the main oval that you don't do until you do the post game, which I have done the post game in Black and White, and it is fun. It's like it's not like Gold and Silver level, obviously, but there is like a lot of stuff, and there's like some high quality. Like enemies are tough. I remember going down to this cave and getting actually lost to a battle to like this veteran something
Yeah.
in this cave, and because he had a full team of 6 that was like Elite 4 level, and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So I did think that was like really fun. There wasn't a whole lot of point to doing it except for just to
It was just more trainers.
Yeah,
to
just for
fight.
fun.
The region just kept going if you didn't want it to end, which
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
was fun.
But and I actually did surprisingly enjoy doing that and like doing some of the legendary stuff. Like they brought in like some legendary Pokemon from Gen 4 and writing little stories about them. That I thought was fun.
And I like a lot of the towns in that game, but the region itself, I'm not a big fan of, like the layout of it.
Region design issues. Yeah, I particularly like at the beginning. I think this is my biggest problem with Black and White 2 is Black and White 2 actually does start off different, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like the first couple of gyms are definitely different from how they are, but then like you get to the New York stand-in, whatever it's called, with that ridiculous song that gets stuck in your head. And then, which I like that town. I actually don't have a problem with that city. But then it's the stuff after that kind of gets monotonous, like that desert route. You got to go through that same ass desert route as before. You got to go through that damn cave with the electric cave. It's like a lot of the same stuff in Black and White 2 as in Black and White. And I wasn't already crazy about it in Black and White. So having to do it again, Black and White 2, I was like, oh, I wish I wasn't doing this right now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I think that's the biggest problem with sequels. But still good games. Even the sequels, they're good. But I would put them much lower than Black and White just in terms of overall Pokemon games.
Yeah.
Okay, number 21, also Pokemon Red and Blue.
Yeah, Red and Blue.
Yeah, so
OGs.
yeah, that's right. So you mentioned that you had Blue, but was that your first Pokemon game?
I think it might have been my first game ever.
Wow, that is so crazy.
I think I might have been like, I might have been like somewhere between 3 and 4 by the time I didn't know what I was doing, but I was walking around and
on that white Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so and and you were always, is it just because, so you had blue, yes, I had red. So was that why you were always just kind of on the Squirtle theme?
Yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
really couldn't tell you why I like Squirtle so much. But
Yeah, I just remember I was associated Brandon with Squirtle for sure, and that is your favorite of the three,
I
right?
also always thought that like Gary and his Blastoise was cool in the show. So
Oh
I was
yeah,
like
definitely.
just super into Squirtle, I guess.
Yeah, and so that was interesting. I remember one of the earliest. I don't think it was like the first time, but I definitely was there. I might even been kind of helping you, like, and you were like in the SSN thing when you finally got your Blastoise for the first time.
Yeah.
That definitely stands out to me. And then I remember another time where we got into naming our Pokemon, which is what we still do today. And you were like, I need a good name for my Blastoise. Clearly you remember this story. And I was like, oh, I should go with Balavia, which is a Chuck Mangione song.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I don't want to name it something unless it actually has something to do with it. Because I would just like randomize in my playlist, like, and
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, you should do this. That's how we end up with some Final Fantasy 7 names.
Right.
And it's also how I kept trying to get you to do your Pokemon original. And then
Right.
you finally did with your legendary.
Yeah, that's right.
Now it's a tradition. But yeah, I convinced Brandon that Balavia did, because it kind of sounds like aquatic in a way.
It does.
And so I was like, oh yeah, it means, I said it meant something.
Some about water in a different language.
And he was like, oh, okay, great.
It's all right. And Balavia is fine. I
Yeah,
guess.
you're like, that's good. And then like finally, like a long time later, I was like, yeah, I didn't really have anything to do with watermelon. I don't know what it has anything. It's the bells or something.
I guess. I don't know. Not a bad song though.
No, it is a good song. I haven't listened to it in a long time, but it's like the main theme of your Blastoise.
It sure is.
But in terms of red and blue versus other ones, obviously just the roots of the like, and this is one that I feel like I've probably replayed the most, oddly, of all the Pokemon games. But it's just like the most core experience. There's like almost no story really, other than Team Rocket or Bastards, but they're almost like a side quest. You just deal with them every once in a while when they pop up. And so your goal is just to catch them all.
That's right.
And beat the Elite Four. You have your rivalry with Blue. But something it's kind of like Halo 1. Just like something about it whenever you go back to play it, it's like it doesn't really get old. I think it ages better than some of the others that are try to make a story like Diamond and Pearl.
Yeah.
Or even Ruby and Sapphire. Or even Black and White, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, because like part of it with Red and Blue is I think it just has a really good sense of momentum and like pacing, weirdly.
It really does.
Like it's always like a kind of feels like the right gap between the gyms. And then it's also cool and novel today how once you get like your third badge, it kind of becomes an open world, really. Like you can do things in various order. And so like it's always fun for me because I usually go into a game knowing what Pokemon I'm going to use. And so I'll just go in and just be like, okay, well, I'm just going to do things in the order that will get me these Pokemon the fastest.
Right, yeah.
And so like you just like do things in just weird orders because of that.
I know it pretty much every time you play is a little different once you get to that section.
Yeah, it is for
how
me
you
for
wanna-
sure. And it's to the
go.
point where it's like I don't even really, in some cases, like I don't really even know what they expect you to do after. Like obviously I know the order that they expect you to do the gyms, but like
Which way to
like
go.
when do they expect you to do like the Self Company, for instance, or when do they expect you to do like those routes like with the bikers? Because some of those bikers are like have a high level Pokemon like in the 30s.
Yeah.
And then like that other route on the right side, it seems like they want you to do the right side
First.
second,
Oh,
because on the whenever you even though they're kind of the trainers are weaker, but then on the right side there's like a house that gives you the best rod. But then in Fuchsia at the bottom, they give you like the second best rod, like the good rod, but they give you the super rod.
Oh, right.
So it's like a weird, like, oh man. And then like you're basically blocked in by the Snorlaxes, one in the east and one in the west. But then once you can wake them up, you can do them in any order. And like you can even, once you get Surf, you can just dip down to 7th gym if you want.
Yeah.
You can get those, as soon as you have Surf, you can get the birds anytime you want.
That's true.
And it's just like, man. And like whenever Reagan has recently played through Fire Red and Leaf Green. And I got to a point where I was like struggling to think about what I should have her do next. I was like, man, I don't really know what I literally actually pulled up a guide to see like what do they recommend that you do the order. So that was I think that is really cool about that game. And then we talked about how there definitely are not great Pokemon to use, and I have there's Pokemon I always try to go in with Pokemon like, no, I want to use this Pokemon like this team, and I try to want to believe in Pokemon, but Red and Blue is probably the one where you get in the most trouble with that, just because I remember my most recent playthrough of Red, I did a Flareon. I was like, well, how bad could it be? It's evolution, but man, it's got some major issues, that first one.
Yeah.
It really doesn't get any fire moves other than like fire. What is it? Fire Wheel. No, not Fire Wheel, because that's a decent move. Flame Spin, Fire
yeah,
Spin,
fire spin.
which is just not good.
No,
And
doesn't quite cut it.
no, and then I foolishly I made an error. I wasn't even thinking about it. I got Fire Blast from Blaine, and I taught it from you instead.
Oh gosh.
So he's just really screwed. He said like and I attacked, so I would just gave him like takedown or something. But man, he was pretty much always getting wiped. If they had friendship back then, he would have just hated my guts. But in terms of the designs, I think they've never come close since to Red and Blue. I think it's just best the designs.
I think you're probably right about that too.
And it's also just like this was the first Pokemon game where you went back into the Pokedex, right?
That's right. I got all 151.
Yeah, and the last one you got was Tauros,
That's right.
and it was hard.
He was a son of a bitch.
Son of a
that's
bitch,
for
you
sure.
named him, yeah, because he really struggled to get that Tauros, and it is hard to do.
Something about it, and I think it's a little easier in yellow because Tauros can like show up earlier.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's like in the back, and
Yeah, in red and blue, he's in the very back. You're running out of steps, and then, just the odds of catching a Pokemon in the Safari Zone when you really want to.
terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really.
And I've actually been looking more into it just because I had a resurgence of playing Gen 1 with Reagan last year. And so what we did was she was playing Fire and Leaf Green because I knew it would be really hard for her to go back to like the actual originals. Not only just because of how they look, but also, she doesn't have like the type matchups down 100%. And that was, they're different in Red and Blue. Like Poison is super effective against like Bug and stuff. And it's just like
That's true.
So I was like, I'm not going to play her through that.
Yeah, that is true.
And so I just had to do Fire and Leaf Grade, and she enjoyed it. But that was a big thing was just like kind of the challenge of it is it's pretty tough.
Yeah, it's not the easiest Pokemon game. That's for
definitely
sure.
compared to the newer ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was looking into the Safari Zone. And like I was like, I'm gonna look up like exactly how this works and stuff. So like for Red and Blue, it's just basically like because I had the bait and the rocks and stuff. And Red and Blue is just basically just completely broken. None of it worked like it was supposed to. You just had to throw balls and pray. But in Fire and Leaf Green, they did kind of work. And like I found this algorithm because Reagan really wanted to catch a Dratini, and I was like, woof, that's not gonna be easy. And so I found like this algorithm where it's like, here's like the order that you should use your stuff to like try to maximize your chances, depending on each Pokemon and what level.
Well, that's kind of cool.
It was crazy. It only works Fire and Leaf because in
Right.
Red it's always just throw ball.
Yeah.
So, and it was crazy because it actually like worked. Like it kept it going, and then like on her last ball she caught it. It was like crazy.
Dang, that is cool.
Yeah, and she still is. She used that Trini all the way through. Still not a Dragonite because she beat the game and it's still a Dragonair. She does not know that it evolves in Dragon. Still,
Don't want to spoil that.
yeah, I know. I had to have it. And she got concerned because she saw Gyarados. She was like, "That's not what my Dragonair is going to evolve into, is it?" I said, "No,
No,
She
don't
was
worry.
like, "Oh,
She thought it was hideous.
yeah, she did." She has. It's very interesting playing Pokemon with her because she just has some hot takes with those designs. But whenever you go back and play this game today, you still have a pretty good time.
I do, and I always go back to Red and Blue over Fire.
Over at Fire and Leaf Green, yeah,
I
it's
don't-
interesting.
It's hard for me to explain.
See, most recently, I have also done that just because she's got my Fire Red copy. But whenever I was kind of going through all the series, and I have completed the Pokedex through Gen 4, and so I definitely obviously utilize all the Game Boy Advance games to do that. And I do think I do like Fire and Leaf Green more, even though I played Red and Blue. Obviously, I had the most nostalgia for that. But
I get it. It makes sense. It's basically the same thing. I mean, there's like, obviously some differences, some glitches and stuff.
yeah, well, that's true. That does make Red and Blue special. You can get your Mew, you can get your.
But,
Yes,
if you want to play them, then, just do whichever one you like the graphics more.
Yeah.
Probably. But, yeah, I always just go back to Red and Blue. There's certain things that I like about it, like how because some of the aspects of it are broken, you use Pokemon that you wouldn't normally, I guess, in other
Oh
games.
yeah, that's a good point.
So, like, I would never use a Persian in Fire and Leaf Green or like Diamond and Pearl, but in Red and Blue,
Red and Blue is like busted.
it could be a bit busted because speed is linked to the critical hits.
Right, and I used similarly in my most recent playthrough. I used a Scyther, and I wanted to use a Scyther in Red and Blue because gets before Caesar existed. So it's like I used Onyx as well because like these were Pokemon that you don't really use in newer games.
Right.
And so I taught Slash, and yeah, it's like literally every time it's a critical hit.
Even Charizard gets Slash. He learns it and it's pretty much a critical hit every time. All the critical hit moves are pretty much every
Yeah,
time.
and then did you know that if you use what's that move? Focus Energy actually makes you less likely to get a critical hit.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, it was just
So-
the whole freaking.
So there are some huge problems
Yeah.
with that.
But I mean, I agree with you. I have Red and Blue on my top 25 as well, and I've played like hundreds more games than you have. And
Yeah.
it's still like is on that level for me. I just think it's so fun.
And like one time I used a wheezing that just destroyed everything with Thunderbolt because it had
It's just special and then a special attack. And
yeah,
special
special
defense.
attack and special defense are both together. So since it has high special defense, its special attack is very high.
Right.
So you could just destroy things. Just little things like that I always enjoy. Like, I don't know, I feel like if I'm going to play Gen 1, I can use different things
Right.
than I would in Fire and Leaf Green. Plus, red and blue, you can always get the Mew glitch every
Yeah,
time.
Mew glitch. And then another thing that I want to bring up is this: like when you were younger, you really got into the glitches. You got into like the mystery of missing no and stuff, and
Oh,
like,
yeah.
get and catch a missing no and yeah.
Yeah, there's Missing No, which is just a jumble of pixels put together. It's its own.
And I
Pokemon
found
glitch.
out that because I remember one time I wasn't even doing it on purpose, but I was leaving. I think I was leaving the Articuno Cave,
Mhm.
and I was going to Cinnabar, and then I was like going up and down on the glitch path
Yeah.
for missing no, but I wasn't trying to go for missing no. I was literally just trying to get some. I think I was just either looking for a Pokemon or I was just trying to get a level real fast. I don't remember what I was doing, but I found out that it's still glitch. Like what it did was it like brought the Pokemon out of that cave
Into the water.
into that
Yeah.
that spot. And I remember I was like, oh, look at this. I just found because I found something crazy.
Yeah.
It might have even been it might have even been the Zapdos cave and not because I think I remember seeing like a Voltorb and I was like, well, that can't be right. It's just like so much weird stuff like that. And when I was a kid, there was a lot of mystery in the game as well. Because the thing about the Mew glitch that was so cool was every once in a while you'd find somebody that actually had a Mew. So you knew it was possible.
Yeah, you knew that somehow someone was
But you didn't know how because obviously you weren't really supposed to be able to do it. And then like there was like all these. I just remember being in elementary school and there was like all these like theories about how to get it.
I know so many people like just putting up fake crap like
Yeah, because the internet was just like such a Wild West back then.
yeah,
you could just
do this to your Game Boy and then hold it upside down and just
yeah, there was like a
dumb
bunch of like in the early YouTube days, like
Mhm.
even people would be like showing you how to do stuff. I remember like that Mario to Ez.
stuff. Mhm.
That was really Sapphire, but
Screwed us.
yeah, and stuff like that. But actually, I think the earliest YouTube video that I remember it was you had pulled up like I think it was the first YouTube video I ever saw. You pulled up this YouTube video and there's a compilation of people catching legendary Pokemon that you really could not
Mhm.
get. And it was a Gen 3. I don't know whether it was I think it was Ruby and Sapphire, but
I think it was like an Emerald.
yeah. And it was Green Day.
Yeah, just
Green Day music playing in the background.
yeah,
Holiday. Yeah. I've tried to find that since and I haven't been able to.
Yeah, I can't either.
But like that was an early YouTube memory, and then also was that guy Maryland getting that Arceus?
Yeah, the Arceus.
Which that was actually real, but
Yeah.
you had to have the
event code
event
for
or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, like there was like all these mysteries about how to get Mew. Like I remember this one guy told me that if you fished after the boat leaves,
Mhm.
which you obviously can't do because it's a locked in cutscene. But if you could fish in the water and like the bubbles that come out, like you could get them there. And then there was also right next to that there was that truck,
Right.
which is crazy. Like, why is that there?
I don't know.
It's just this random asset that's never used anywhere else.
Yeah.
And they put it off somewhere where they didn't think you'd be able to get.
You can't even see it unless you go
Yeah, you have
surf.
to surf over there, which you're not supposed to have surf yet.
But the idea was if you use strength on the truck, you get Mew.
Yeah, or I even remember hearing if you slash the tires.
What?
But obviously that was all just BS, and it's just a random truck asset that's over there.
That is crazy. But there is a Mew glitch. Where
Yeah,
you can
and
get it
there's
every
actually
time.
two. You can do it two different ways.
That's right.
But yeah, it always works. And so obviously, anytime I play those, I do it, even if I'm not going to use them.
I know. I mean, I always just use them because I'm like, when else am I going to use Mew? I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I played Red, I did use them. And what's pretty crazy about for now, until they get rid of Pokemon Bank, but if you play it on the 3DS or
Mhm.
2DS, you actually can move that stuff up
All the way up to Bank.
which is crazy, to home even.
Yeah, to home.
Which I've never done, but it is pretty crazy you can do that. Okay, we spent a lot of time talking about that. Number 20 is Halo 3.
Halo 3.
Man, shifting gears. Nintendo to Xbox.
Yep.
So Brandon, when he got into the Halo games, it was because like whenever you were a kid, you were a picky eater, like extremely picky, only ate like a very select few things. And Dad was like, he came up with this scheme that every time you tried something new, did you have to like it? I think it was like you had to like actually add it to your diet.
No, I really didn't. All I had to do was like just take a bite of it.
Okay.
Literally all I had to do was
Well,
try
I
it.
guess he was just gambling that would be enough that you would like it.
Yeah.
And it was you just get a Halo game.
Yep. Get a Halo
and
game.
there was a lot back then because I guess Halo 5 wasn't out yet, but everything through Halo 4 existed.
Yeah.
And so that was like 5 or 6 things.
Uh-huh.
And so yeah, you got the Halo games. This is this is like I'm like in college, I think, or maybe even still high school. I'm not really sure, but I was not in Halo. I was not an Xbox player at all, and so Brandon got into Halo before me. And then yeah, you got really into him, and you just like really loved him. Did you play him in order?
I did start with Halo 1. I don't know if I went in full order, but I
But you
did
had pretty quickly. You had all the
yeah, pretty quickly I had them all. Yeah, we had to go behind mom's back for
yeah,
that
because they were
one.
rated him.
Yeah, which was not allowed.
Yeah,
And
yeah, definitely not.
But pretty much all my friends and Boy Scouts were into Halo
Yeah.
at the time, which I think was where Dad saw the connection.
Oh, okay.
Because I was wanting to play it with them, but
Mhm.
it's not allowed because it's him.
Right.
And he was like, "Well, if you eat some food, then maybe."
That was his little scheme, and it did work. And now Brandon will eat anything, including some bone marrow.
That's right. And now I love Halo.
Yeah, me too. And so for me, I didn't. Brandon was actually the one that got me into Halo because we made a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it again?
I think I had to watch through all of Fallout 4
Yeah,
just so you could play some Halo games.
yeah. Which he didn't care for, and he's not a huge fan of Fallout 4 because of that, probably. But and then every time we would play a Halo game, I was like, man, this is awesome. And we just played him split screen on his 360. This is before either of us had Xbox One.
Which is crazy to think about too.
Yeah, I know. And we actually started with Reach, and so I played Reach first. Then I had to go back to Halo 1, and I was like not a huge fan of Halo 1 at the time,
Right.
Because it definitely is not as good as Halo Reach. And then Halo 2, I liked more. But by the time we got to Halo 3, I was just like, wow, this is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because I just thought it was so good. Like the scope of the levels, level quality and scope in 3 is just crazy good.
The jump from 2 to 3 is massive.
I mean, it
for
was
sure.
going from an Xbox to a 360 game, so
Yeah.
it makes sense that it would be like they could do a lot more with the
It
scope.
does.
But because like visually, there's still some issues with 3, really. Like
The
with
faces.
the faces, yeah. But just like the size of those levels, the amount of stuff that would happen, like that. Really, when you get to the arc in particular, like that, the arc and then the Covenant back to back. Wow, it's just crazy how good it was.
And it just keeps going on and on.
Yeah, so
All
that was
epicness.
at the time. I said that I liked Halo 3 the best, and since then I've gone back and reassessed, and I still think it's close, but I like Halo Reach the best. But another thing about Halo 3 was just like the story. It was kind of the end of the trilogy, so it was pretty high
It
quality.
was like the grand finale's big epic ending.
Yeah, and like you don't really think of Halo as like a great story game, really, but Halo 3, it was like some good payoffs, like the all the elites and them coming together to work with you, and like the Arbiter and Chief being together the whole time, and Johnson. Remember that scene? I was thinking of that scene where they're like trading weapons with the elites.
Yeah.
Like Johnson goes and
That's
gets
a great scene.
he goes and gets it. Oh, and then like the White Elite and everything. It's just like everybody's just like so.
The White Elite is awesome in Halo 3.
Yeah, just like everybody is like that they built up most through Halo 2, honestly, because Halo 1 didn't have a lot going on with story.
Yeah.
Then like it all just kind of comes to a head in Halo 3. It's just so good.
Halo 2 might actually be my preferred story.
Oh, I agree. Yeah,
But-
Halo 2's story is excellent. And when I played through them with Reagan last year, she liked Halo 2's story the best.
Yeah.
And just the game overall. Because she's playing like obviously the upgraded version.
Right.
So it looks even better in Halo 3, so
Exactly.
but yeah, she enjoyed like the stuff with the Arbiter, but it is really cool how when you do split screen, which we did, one of you actually is the Arbiter the whole time. Like
That's awesome.
And like he uses like different weapons. I mean, I wish he had the invisibility ability as in 2, which he doesn't. But
Yeah.
he does like spawn with different weapons and stuff. Just really cool. So yeah, that was my first experience playing it. Because of that playthrough where we played through all the Halo games together, I became a lifelong fan. And now we both still play them pretty regularly.
Yeah.
You played him recently.
I sure did.
Yeah. I played through ODST with Brett like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it didn't take very long.
No, it doesn't take long. Okay, number 19, Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
Right.
Interesting pick, because this was interesting to me because I would think for you that Ruby and Sapphire, the original, would be up there in terms of like your most nostalgic games.
It is.
But I don't think there's any doubt in your mind that the remakes are superior.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's true.
And it kind of comes down to what? Like, like kind of a combination of things. Like, obviously, the art design is improved.
I kind of just feel like since I am super nostalgic about the originals, they kind of
get credit for that.
Yeah, the remakes do because they're kind of like fan servicey in a way.
Oh yeah,
like so.
Yeah, and they have that. And they have like obviously higher quality of life stuff than the originals. They have the like the bomb screen is like your Pokedex where you can see whether you've caught everything on a route and stuff.
You get mega evolutions.
Mega evolutions, you get Soren.
That's right.
Well, that's very cool.
Yeah.
And that was like really where they kind of put some of the fan service stuff in there, I think, because like you could get like go into those wormholes or whatever, and
I
there's
know.
legendary Pokemon from like every game.
That's right.
And they even had the accurate music playing. Like
Right,
if you
yeah.
fell on ho, it would play the ho music.
Mhm.
That was pretty crazy.
I'd like ran into like a Suicune at one time or something.
Yeah, and it would probably play the doo 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 doo.
Yeah. Yeah. Like an unknown song.
And then what do you think about like whenever I think about Ruby and Sapphire too, and particularly you kind of appreciate it more, I think, in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire because of the Soren. But I do think of Ruby and Sapphire as one of the highest quality like region designs. Like if we're talking about Black and White, it's like a pretty boring region. But Ruby and Sapphire, they did a good job of like kind of trying to mix in a lot of different stuff in that region.
No, I agree for sure. I really like its region. Actually, I even like the water stuff, but
Yeah, I do too. Because like I remember playing it as a kid, which obviously this is the 7.9 too much water, or whatever.
right, yeah.
But like I remember, particularly the original, like back in the day, because the game just kind of seemed bigger from that perspective. Like it does kind of make it somehow make the world seem smaller. I guess Soren probably does a big part of that, where you can soar everywhere and you can see it all laid out like that. But like in the original, but like I remember just thinking that world was huge. Like just like because all the route, like it just made all the water routes just make it seem so
Yeah.
big.
I do think it was probably bigger than, Johto and Kanto.
Yeah, and this was like Pokemon. It's kind of interesting to think about all the water stuff too, because this is like Nintendo in their like water age.
Right.
Because they had the Wind Waker, and then they had Super Mario Sunshine. They had this.
Yeah. You freaking book it on that thing.
Yeah, you are flying through the water. They knew you were gonna be in there a lot.
Yeah,
So
you're saying you
because
do
like you
need
go to
those-
Diamond and Pearl, and you're just like can't believe how slow it
Oh
is.
my God.
Everything is slow in that game. But then you go to Ruby and Sapphire by comparison, you were just like got a freaking turbo jet.
That's what it's like now.
One thing that sticks out to me about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire specifically, and unlike the original, is I think it has the best credit scene in any of the Pokemon games.
Oh, I
Because
agree.
like obviously we love Sun and Moon, and like the story stuff going on at the end is better, but just like the actual credits where it like shows you beating each gym leader and what your Pokemon was and like what move they used and everything. It's just like awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
And then obviously in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire they also did the post game.
The
Was it
Delta
the
episode.
Delta episode? And so like when you play the game, did you not know that was in there?
No.
Yeah, that is so crazy.
Yeah.
And that was like a kind of an example of stuff coming back from you like researching stuff on YouTube, because like there was like it kind of had some callbacks to the actual Deoxys scene.
That's
like,
right. Yeah, because if you did the event, I guess Ruby
Like
and
back in the
Sapphire,
day.
yeah, the Deoxys thing. You were on like an island. You followed this little triangle around.
Yeah, it
and
made
then-
like some specific movements.
Yeah, and Deoxys would show up, and it made like a specific noise too.
Uh-huh.
And so when that happened in there, I was like, "Oh my God, there he is!"
Yeah. Because like the way they reveal it, first they play that ridiculous Sonic the Hedgehog music,
Yeah.
out into space, and
Which
then
I love that scene.
yeah, and then like it just like this triangle pops up,
Yeah,
and then it just does this.
that's when you know it's Deoxys.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I definitely like it over the originals too, is because
just that stuff they added.
the Delta episode is crazy.
Yeah, they added that character with like the violin music.
Uh-huh. Really nice music.
That was pretty crazy. Yeah, I think I only because I definitely have. It's been a long time since I've played Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Like, I think whenever I might, because remember it took me a lot longer to finish a Pokemon game than it did for you and Brett.
Yeah.
Fire Red Leaf Green was the first one I ever actually finished, but I can't remember if I finished the original Ruby and Sapphire first, or if it was Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire the first time.
That's
I was
interesting.
I honestly cannot remember, but I have only done the Delta episode and like all that post game stuff once, I think.
Yeah.
But like, and it was a long time ago. It was like around when it came out. I remember doing it, maybe in Pappy's, but with Ruby and Sapphire, like the original Ruby and Sapphire, I played that more recently because the only reason I did but that was interesting too, because we never thought we would play the originals again.
Yeah.
But I did because it was completely Pokedex in Gen 4, and it's very necessary to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so I to play it that way, and it was fun to like to go back to it that way and just kind of be reminded of what it was like back in the day. And then I think the thing that holds back Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire the most for me is just unlike the original, which I would say is pretty. I don't know if it's like a hard game. It's more on the challenging end, but Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is like super easy. It's like X and Y level easy.
It's way too easy.
And I think that, and like, I don't necessarily need them to be like hard games, but
I mean, but it gets, you're finding you fight a bunch of trainers that only have like one or two Pokemon. They're
yeah,
over in, very short amount of time, the battles.
yeah. I think they just needed to maybe at least just curve the levels up higher or something.
Yeah,
Take into account
they do. But other than the difficulty from X and Y, I feel like it brings over all the good things that X and Y brought to the table and actually put in a better game.
yeah, better game than X-Y. Doesn't have that boring ass region, and all those terrible characters and
Yeah.
horrible Pokemon designs that all of which X and Y
All of
had,
it.
and terrible pacing as well.
Yep. The pacing, man, it was rough.
No, I know. I was trying to play it recently, and it was just like, man, we loved it at the time, but boy, did that one fall off for us. X and Y, worst Pokemon games.
Yep. Sure is.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, Omega Ruby with Alpha Sapphire though, very high on Brandon's list. Number 18 now. Going back and forth between these series. Number 18 is Halo Reach.
Halo Reach.
Yeah. So that was the one. This was my introduction to Halo because I guess you were just thinking we'll just do it in chronological order because there's not really a great time to go back to Reach unless and we knew we were gonna do them all, so we just did Reach first. And I remember just playing it and just being like, I never really played anything like that before. For terms of first person stuff, I'd really only played, like the Fallout series and stuff, but which is obviously very different. But just in terms of the way they did like the cutscenes and stuff in Halo Reach, like I just never seen anything like that before, really.
Yeah, I don't know.
It felt very different. Like I think part of it was just the techniques they used with the camera, where like it would always be like attached to something, and like it wasn't like always framing that action perfectly like what you would expect.
Yeah.
And so like obviously whenever he's going into space, like they have it attached on the thing that drops off.
Right, yeah.
And then also whenever he comes back down, like after George throws him out, there's like this shot where he's like kind of getting out of the wreckage, and it's just like you kind of like almost barely see him. He's like barely in frame.
Yeah.
It's like something like the camera's like on the ground, like it's falling out of the ship with you or something. It's like really cool techniques.
The music and the camera shots in that game are crazy good.
Yeah. And then, so for terms of Reach, I definitely think even though Halo 3, like you could argue Halo 3 maybe for best story just because it is the culmination of the trilogy, but I think I do like Reach's story even better because in terms of Star Wars, Rogue One is my favorite, and it's basically the same story.
Yeah.
And I obviously I played Reach before we saw Rogue One, but I think that's my favorite Halo story as well. I think I just really like that storytelling tactic of just this team that they kind of know they're screwed, but they just gotta
get the job done.
Yeah, very Rogue One-esque, and they did a good job. And I think it wouldn't work as well if they didn't make those characters like they don't have to be like masterpiece characters. None of them are like S tier characters or anything, but like they're just like good characters.
Yeah, better than most in other Halo games.
Yeah, exactly. Because like it's the only Halo game where they did it successfully, I would say.
Yeah.
Because they tried it in ODST, and that was still Bungie, which is crazy. The jump in quality from the ODST team to the Reach team in 1 year is astounding.
It really is unbelievable.
So it just makes me think that they must have had a different like writing team on them.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it also just seems crazy to be able to make Reach in that amount of time. So I feel like they must have split the team.
Yeah, they probably did.
And so that was just a huge because the ODST team is horrendous. It's horrendous storytelling in ODST. It's just god awful.
Yeah.
Whereas like Reach, everything is just like really good, really solid.
Yeah, it's kind of unexpected, honestly.
Yeah, and then obviously 343 could not take those lessons, and Halo 5 is back to being trash.
Yeah,
teams.
Sure is.
At least they're a little bit different than the ODST team for me because the ODST team they're just terrible characters. Whereas like with 5, they're just not characters. They're just nothing. I don't like really view them negatively. I just don't think of them at all.
Yeah, they're just not even there.
Yeah, exactly. They're just these random people that are with you for no reason.
Yeah.
But I also think that Reach, even though 3's is really strong, I do think Reach overall has the best missions in the series.
I think
if you're lining up the best Halo missions, it's kind of like for the way I look at albums. Like if I'm lining up the best albums, like Bruce Springsteen just dominates the top, and if I was lining up the best Halo missions, Reach would just be cleaning house at the top.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, like New Alexandria.
Yeah, there's just like that stretch. Because I mean, like I even love the first one, which I forget what's
Long Night of Souls.
Well, yeah, of course, but I'm talking about the first mission. What is it? It's
Winter Contingency.
Yeah, Winter Contingency. I love Winter Contingency, and like I know it's just a very basic mission, but I just think they do such a good job of like rolling out the Covenant. And it's like, I mean, obviously if you're playing the game that you're gonna be against Covenant, but just like the way that they roll out the tension of like you kind of like Sephiroth style, where like they see you before you see them, and
Yeah,
like you're just like, man, where are they and stuff. And you
yeah.
don't really know what they can do
You're
or
just
what they're gonna like look like and stuff.
yeah.
And then like you even see them like on the heat map before
Hmm.
you actually can see them. That I think that is just brilliantly done. And then
The
they
rest of
go,
the level's pretty good too.
yeah, and then like pretty much from there, it's like they slow the pace down for that one sniping mission, which is still really good, but
Yeah.
you know, I would think it's probably definitely the worst one. But like that run from what is it, Tip of the Spear, and then Long Night of Solace, and then Exodus, and the New Alexandria,
And then
and
the
then the package. It's just crazy how good that quality
I
is.
know, even honestly, to the very last level.
Yeah, and the last level's awesome too. Yeah, and I think and historically, I think Halo kind of struggles a little bit with the last level. Like generally, the last levels are not anywhere near the best in the game. And I still think that's kind of true with Reach. Like that level isn't anywhere near the best, but for last Halo levels, it's like crazy good.
Man, you're right about that.
You cover like a lot of ground in it. There's like a lot. They change it. They hit you with all the different enemies. Like all the different enemy design is highlighted at different points. You got vehicles, and then they even throw in the turret sequence at the end, which is like isn't the greatest thing in the world. But you know,
Yeah.
it's like the way they build it up with you know he has to stay behind to man the gun is really cool. You have to fight
Hmm.
those four really hard elites in there before you
Yeah.
get it. They all have different weapon.
Right.
Yeah, so just like all of that stuff is just I think just awesome. And then just in terms of also just with Halo, this is Halo in general, but you know, obviously Reach is my favorite one, and you agree. Just like in terms of like just co-op games, it doesn't get any better than that.
I agree. I think honestly, any Halo co-op game just doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, it's just the best co-op series.
But Reach is the most fun, I think.
Yeah. Okay, number 17 on your list. This is one I feel like you haven't played in a long time. Is Kingdom Hearts 2.
Oh, Kingdom Hearts 2. It's been an extremely long time since I played this game.
Yeah, and I haven't really played through the whole thing in a long time either. Me and Reagan actually started it because Reagan and I played through Kingdom Hearts 1 a few years ago. Because we had like I'd introduced her to some Final Fantasy at that time, and she's a huge Disney fan, and I was like, well, this is gonna blow your mind.
Yeah.
And obviously she thought it was like amazing, the first one. And
Right.
that's still my favorite in the series. And then we kind of went. I was like kind of trying to because obviously it goes off the rails in terms of the storytelling. If you try, you gotta like try to really be plugged in. So for her, I was like, well, I'll just try to take it chronologically from there. I didn't want to start with Birth by Sleep because it's just not good enough. But I'll just take it. I'll just do it as a flashback when we get to it. But like going from Kingdom Hearts 1, I was like, well, let's just take it to that card game or whatever. And then we just tried to start it and we just couldn't get through it. So I was like, well, whatever, we'll just watch cutscenes. And then on the actual disc, they just have the cutscenes for the Roxas game on the DS, which I have actually played, but we just watched the cutscenes on there. And so by the time we got to Kingdom Hearts 2 at the beginning, she knew exactly who Roxas was and everything made sense. But for us,
It
going from
did
Kingdom Hearts
not.
1 to Kingdom Hearts 2, just randomly this other guy, we were like, what is going on here?
I know.
But they kind of that was by design. Like now, yeah, if you do it in chronological order, you know who he is and everything makes sense. But at the time, it was basically impossible because that Roxas game did not exist yet. So even if you play the Game Boy Advance game, you have no idea who he is.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that is like an interesting storytelling decision that they made.
Yeah, they definitely wanted to like catch you off guard.
Yeah, and
Make
it was
a
successful.
surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only problem is that the first thing he does is try to find that thing that took the photos, but not just photos, but also the word photos.
Yeah. I can't say the word.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird mechanic that never comes back again, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So that was a questionable choice. But yeah, the whole thing of like Roxas, I just remember playing through those early times with Roxas, and it's just like it works so well on so many levels because there's like this mystery. They get you like invested in what's going on with them, like the story with like like he's like experiencing all this weird stuff and he can't explain it to his friends, and it's like, man, that's like so frustrating. And then you get like these flashbacks with like freaking Count Dooku over there,
Yeah.
and you're just like, what is going on here? And then every time he goes to sleep, he dreams about Sora, and so like they're just like hype, and they even give you a percentage bar of like how long it is before Sora's back, and it's
Yeah.
like you're just like hyping him up like crazy. So it's just like such a useful tool on
Yeah.
many levels
beginning
of storytelling.
The beginning of that game is unbelievably good.
Yeah. Now, whenever you actually played, because there was like when we first had these games, I had them, and like Brandon kind of mostly just watched me play them, I think. But eventually, you did play through one for sure. I mean, you played the shit out of one and got
Yeah.
the ultimate weapon and everything. Did you do that with two as well?
I didn't like do a bunch of like post game and secret boss stuff, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah, because
mean,
they added a lot more in this one probably than the first one.
but I did a lot in that game.
And did you do it? Did you play it before one?
No.
Okay, so you didn't do one first.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously the Roxas stuff is just so like there's more to the I mean the rest of the a lot of people think two is the best, you know.
Yeah.
And I can see why they think that because like they made the combat a lot more action focused and you know there's really not as much strategic depth to it, frankly. Like you just can just smash your way through a lot of stuff and it looks cool and you got the action commands and everything and it's just like you know, well, high quality for sure. And then, you know, I think people look back fondly on the Roxas stuff and everything. I think my biggest problem with it is this, like the pacing of it versus the first one. Like you do like the first one, I think they did a great job of doing the original storytelling, mixing in the Disney elements. They make you wait for the Disney elements in the first one, like they really hype up. Like they
Yeah.
kind of do what when you're waiting for Sora to come back. In two, they do that in the first one, but they're like waiting for you to meet up with Donald Goofy. Had a similar arc where I was like, man, I cannot wait for him to meet these guys, and it's just like it was like highly hyped up for me by the time it happened. You saw on that island and stuff, and then you spend more time in each world at a time in the first one, and they mix in the main story with the Disney plots.
Yeah.
Whereas in the second one, I felt like. And you know, they do a great job in the beginning. Like all the original plot stuff is really great, and then you know they're mixing in the Final Fantasy stuff as well. And then you know you go on like these long stretches where it's just like just Disney stuff.
It really takes a a backseat after you get Sora back and you leave Traverse Town and after you get to Merlin and everything.
Yeah, all the Merlin stuff is really cool though.
But once you start going to all the Disney worlds, the main story just takes too much of a backseat.
Yeah, I think that's probably my biggest criticism with it. And then just also some of the mechanic stuff. I understand that people think the first one's combat is like clunkier, which it is, but like I just like the magic system in the first one more. I like the summons a lot more. And you just like they're just a lot. Both of those are just a lot more useful, I think, in the second one. Because in the second one, there's really no reason you would do anything other than just like smash the crap out of everything. Because with your keyblades.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But you know, one thing that is obviously very interesting for us looking back is you know we haven't had any Final Fantasy games pop up yet, but people are going to find out that pretty soon here that you're a pretty big fan of that series, and. Like, but when we played Kingdom Hearts at the time, we had never even touched a Final Fantasy.
No, I honestly didn't even care about them that much.
Yeah, I think we
Flower.
even barely kind of knew that they were from other games. Like to us, they might as well have been original characters.
Yeah, they might.
I think the only reason that I knew that they were from other games is because of Jiminy's notebook.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he like said because like you go on there and like he'll like if it's a Disney character, he tells you what movie it's from. And if it's a Final Fantasy character, he tells you what Final Fantasy game he's from.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, with Leon, it's weird how which ones they chose as well. Like in Kingdom Hearts 1, like it's like Leon is kind of the leader of the group, which is you know, Squall from 8, which is an interesting choice. And like, you know, even though 9 was out at that point, like they have no 9 characters like at all.
I know. Well, to be honest,
until 2 with the VIII, but
until VIII, yeah.
When they do, and then the what their choices with him is odd.
It is odd for sure.
But the point is like that we just did not have any interest. Like for me, I don't know about for you, but for me, the ranking for me was Disney content. That was the main reason I wanted it as a kid. Then like the original story, as I got playing it, I got interested in that, and then Final Fantasy would have been last. And then like once I really got into Final Fantasy, then there was like a period where probably it flipped. Yeah, I was like most interested in what they were doing with the Final Fantasy stuff, and then the original story, and then the Disney stuff. And so now I actually think that the reason I love that series is the original stuff the best.
That's what I always thought too.
And then I guess the fact that they use Final Fantasy I think is really cool. And then I would put Disney probably last, but it's still cool that they use it because I grew up. Brandon I don't think grew up as big with Disney fans as I did, but like before I had video games really, because I didn't get my PS1 until I think my 7th birthday. And before that, I had a Game Boy for a little bit of that, but even when I had my Game Boy at first, I didn't even know that you could play Pokemon on it until someone showed me that they existed. So all I had was that casino game, but which I didn't understand how it worked. But so I didn't really play a lot of games until I was, first and second grade and stuff. And so before that, I just watched a bunch of Disney movies. So
Yeah.
I was just like, hey,
It's kind of a golden era for you too, or
what?
the '90s for
Yeah, definitely. Oh, for Disney, yeah, they were just like on fire. It was
Yeah.
like their best era, I would say. Even better than like their original era, probably.
Yeah, it is. It is probably the best. Era.
And so yeah, so I was there was like such a perfect idea to do that. I don't know why they want. I guess just because it's Square and they wanted to mix in their characters
I
as well
know,
with
I
Final
know.
Fantasy. But it's just such a ludicrous idea that I don't think would ever happen if they try to do it today.
I know it's almost shocking that it even worked
Exists,
and
yeah.
that it was even popular. 'Cause
Yeah.
you could, there's like I could totally see it just flopping.
Oh yeah, yeah. It seems like a
It'd be
terrible
like a
plan.
Final Fantasy spinoff that just flops. Like you
Oh,
type
yeah, one of
zero.
many.
Yeah, one of many.
Yeah, exactly.
But-
And I remember like if you go back and which is harder to do now thanks to GameStop with closing all the Game Informer stuff, but if you go back and like find Reiner's like reviews of like Kingdom Hearts 1, he's like, kind of trying to explain. It's like, well, yeah, it's like this crazy combination of stuff, but surprisingly it works. Surprisingly, it's a masterpiece. Oh, and I remember like it's like kind of the gift that kept on giving for us too, because after we had played the first Final Fantasy game we played was 7, and then we like went back and we're playing 2, and it's like Tifa shows up in Kingdom Hearts 2. We're like,
I
oh
know.
my gosh, there's this Tifa that we didn't like before. We just would have not even thought anything about her.
I know, but it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
That I do love that section in Kingdom Hearts 2 where all the
Yeah, like in the middle.
the Final Fantasy
It's
characters
kind of like a
come up,
Final Fantasy highlight section for no reason.
and you have to like
because it's cool.
you had to kill those 1,000 Heartless for no reason.
Yeah, for no reason at all, except for it's awesome. And then Sephiroth shows up for no reason at all, except for it's awesome.
Yeah,
Doesn't even do anything.
yeah.
It's just freaking awesome.
But it's awesome. I love that section in that game.
Yeah, it's so good. And I remember because I had the guide for both because like back then we actually used book guides instead of just looking everything up on the internet today. And I remember like scrolling to the back. That was one of the fun things that you would do when you had guides as kids, is you'd scroll it back and see like what crazy stuff you're gonna be doing at the end. And like at literally the back was the Sephiroth boss fight of that first one. I was, man, look at this guy. Like that's the first time I ever saw him. Was that book.
That's crazy.
I know. And so it's just like now we think of these characters so differently. And another thing that is so crazy about that is that we still haven't fully grasped all of the Kingdom Hearts or all of the Final Fantasy content, because like in 2, for instance, like Auron from 10 is in your party.
That's right.
And we've never played Final Fantasy 10.
Technically in Kingdom Hearts 1 there's Tidus and Wakka.
That's right. Yeah. And like I think I knew that them first. Like because I got into GameStop and seen the cover of Final Fantasy 10.
Yeah, probably.
And I was like, well, that's that guy from Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the first one I was aware of. These guys are from a different game. And then eventually I could tell like just from the book that from Jiminy's journal that they exist in these other games. But yeah, like that boss fight with Cloud, it's like crazy. But for us, we just had no idea who it was. But now I just wonder how like there's still things to get out of it that we are still not fully getting because we haven't played Final Fantasy 10.
I don't know if it's too much.
And even 10-2, because they bring in the girls from 10-2 in Kingdom Hearts 2.
That's true.
For some reason, they're like little fairies or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand why they did that.
I still don't either.
But there's just so much crazy stuff. I think I got everything in Kingdom Hearts 1. Like every Final Fantasy reference Kingdom Hearts 1 I have experienced. But, well, except for Wakka and Tidus, I guess. But with 10, yeah, like and 10-2, haven't experienced those.
That's right.
And it was a long time before we even knew, like when we played Kingdom Hearts 2 the first time, we had no idea that Setzer, the champion of that sport they play, Struggle, is that what it is?
Yeah.
We had no idea that he was a Final Fantasy 6 character.
No,
and of all the Final Fantasy 6 characters to choose, they choose Setzer. That is so crazy.
Yeah, it really is.
I know Brett played, it had been so long since he'd played the Kingdom Hearts, and so he was playing him last year, and he got to that part, and he was like, Setzer is the champion. And I was like, yeah.
He's mind blowing.
And like Cypher as well, like Cypher and the Final Fantasy 8 crew.
Cypher.
And it's just like, wow. Like to me, they were just all original characters. And that's true. They're all from these different Final Fantasy
I know.
games.
But those were, I kind of felt like when I was seeing Kingdom Hearts for the first time, that's what I was interested in.
Who's those characters?
Over the Disney stuff.
Because to us, it was all original characters.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And I just never really got into the Disney stuff that much. So, I mean, it was cool to see, like, oh, like he's running around in the Tarzan world. And he, like, it's like kind of like you're playing a bunch of games at once. Like you're playing the Tarzan game now. You're playing the Alice in
because back
Wonderland.
then, It really was because back then on the PlayStation 1, they would split all those up.
Yeah.
So like if you were going to play a Tarzan, then you would get the Tarzan game or you would get the Bugs Life game.
Yeah.
Which is what I did. I had a lot of those because Disney was like they were going crazy with anytime they made anything, they would make a game for it.
But it was like all in one.
Yeah, having it all in one. And I remember seeing that. And particularly Tarzan was like kind of the newest Disney movie, I think, at that time, or the one that was like the biggest success. I think they'd maybe done like The Emperor's New Groove and stuff since then. But like in terms of like a kind of a epic Disney movie, it wasn't like a comedy. It was like Tarzan was the newest one. And I just remember seeing that on the ad, like seeing the ad on downstairs on our TV in the living room, and just seeing like Tarzan. And obviously another thing that is a big thing for this too is we're coming from the PS1. This is very early in the PS2, and it's square and it looks better than like anything else. Nothing is even remotely close to this level of quality, visual quality.
That's true.
And so there's like on the TV, I'm seeing that it's a high quality animation where Sabor, which is the leopard, and Tarzan's like going after him, and he's like blocking him with like his stick or whatever. And I just seeing that compared to what I was used to playing, the Tarzan game on the PS1, it's like a 2D side scroller.
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap, I just was mind blown. And that was what I remember seeing the most was like that Tarzan thing and being like, I gotta get this. I gotta see that Tarzan content.
Gonna see that Tarzan.
Yeah, that was what I was most
way
excited
better
about.
than my game.
Yeah, and it was. And it's another thing that's interesting too about Kingdom Hearts is, with all the Final Fantasy stuff and like basically all the Square stuff that we've come to enjoy since then, we always kind of played it after the fact, except for the new stuff, obviously like 16 and 7 remake and Birth and stuff. But Kingdom Hearts, that was one that we played like actually at the time.
Yeah.
And we actually like the way people look back on 7 when they played as a kid,
Yeah.
we look back on Kingdom Hearts like we really actually did do that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of makes it special for me. So that's why Kingdom Hearts 1 for me, it's like throughout the years, it's just climbed higher and higher and higher on my list, and now it's like number 3 on my list. So
That's just crazy.
just like so, yeah. I have it even above a lot of the Final Fantasy. And then I guess the last thing I want to say on this before we move on is it's kind of interesting how our brains have been rewired. Like if you go back, like now you don't even think about the fact that you were introduced to all these Final Fantasy characters through Kingdom Hearts. Like whenever you look at Yuffie, for instance, you don't think about, oh yeah, of course, Yuffie from Kingdom Hearts. But for a while there, that is how I thought about him. You know what I mean? Like when we played 7 for the first time, I was like, oh look, here's Yuffie from
Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, from Kingdom Hearts. And like you remember, even Brett, as ridiculous as it is, when Aerith died in 7, he was like, he thought she would come back because she's in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, he's like, well, she's gonna be all right. She's in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, and you're just like, had to break him the news.
I was like, well, I think we need to have a talk here.
Yeah. I wish I could be in your brain when that's going on. Because you were like, calculating. Okay, well, do I just spoil that friend that's not going to happen? And you made the right decision because otherwise he would have just been waiting for her to come back the whole time.
Yeah, I know.
So you just had to just like break the news then.
I was like, yeah, she's gone, pal.
Yeah. But like, and like Aerith is a good example too. She's in both those games. And like obviously early on I was introduced to Aerith first and Cloud and all this and Sephiroth and everything through Kingdom Hearts. But now when I think about those characters, I don't even think about the fact that they're in Kingdom Hearts. It's just like when I play Kingdom Hearts, I'm like, oh yeah, here they are. Isn't that so weird? But
that is weird how it's like flipped like
it's like
that.
like your brain has been rewired since then.
Well, is rewired by a much better game, I think.
Yeah, that's true. So we'll get to that later. Okay, number 16, another Square Enix game. Now much more recent Square Enix game. This is Octopath Traveler.
Oh, Octopath Traveler.
Yeah, number 16 on the list. I am happy to see that here. This was, I don't know about for you, but when I was getting a Switch, this was the reason. This was basically the game that made me get a Switch.
Yeah.
It was like, because back then it was, you gotta like put yourself back in that time frame that we were in when this game was coming out, because there had really never been a game that looked like this at that time, where it's like this HD 2D style. And so they had like, it was like, I think when the Switch was announced, pretty like early on, like when the Switch came and it was announced in like 2017, it was like kind of known. Like that was like one of the early things was like, yeah, Square Enix is making this game for the Switch. It's called Octopath Traveler. Here's what it looks like. And I remember we looked at that and we were like, well, holy crap, this looks incredible.
Yeah. I remember seeing like commercials and stuff for it and just being like, this looks awesome.
Yeah, you might have actually heard about it before me even.
Yeah, I was just like, this looks amazing. This game just looks incredible. And then you see the Square Enix thing at the end. I'm like, well, this is going to be the best game ever.
Yeah. And
I don't know what this is, but it's got to be the greatest game ever.
Yeah, and so it's just so crazy for them to It's kind of like a resurgence of the Square Nintendo partnership in a way, because they had obviously gone away from Nintendo
It really
for
is.
Final Fantasy VII, and then they really hadn't like they had done little things on Nintendo. It's not like they like I think for the PS1 and Nintendo 64 they just had like a hard cutoff. They were just like done with each other, and then with the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance in particular, they obviously kind of brought the relationship back because they would port the old Final
Yeah.
Fantasies to the Game Boy Advance, and then on GameCube I think Crystal Chronicles was like exclusive. So they had like those weird like little things that they would do
They were
together.
trying to get over it.
Yeah, trying to get over their pain of the past. And then I think there's probably some weird Wii stuff. The Wii is just like there's all kinds of weird stuff for that.
Yeah, I know.
That thing.
Well, I mean, you could go back and play, the virtual, the
Yeah, virtual console
like
stuff.
the old
But
Nintendo Final.
but there's also like weird stuff. Like they made like the 4 After Years was originally a Wii thing.
Yeah.
So it's just like they were just, the Wii is just a weird time. And then Wii U, I don't know that they really did anything. But then the Switch, this is kind of like the return of Nintendo back to like the forefront after, because people always think about the Wii as being like this huge success, which it was, but
Well, not after the
I
Wii.
think you forget that the Wii really fell off. And that's
Hard.
why they had to do the Wii U, which they did in like 2011 or 12 or whatever it was. It was like before the other stuff came out. Like they wouldn't have done that. Like if you look at the Switch, it's been like an insane long time since the Switch came out, and
Yeah.
it's still we haven't gotten the Switch. We're getting close, but like the Wii, they felt like they needed to come in with something else because while the Wii was like such a huge success at the beginning, it really had a steep fall off when everybody got their PS3s and 360s and kind of got used to the idea of motion controls, and it wasn't like a unique idea anymore.
Yeah.
And
And they were missing so many games that PS3 and Xbox
yeah,
360
like all of
both
them
had.
basically. They had
Yeah.
like no third party support like at all really.
Yeah.
And so it actually had like a pretty steep drop off. And I don't think I think I kind of forgot about that, but I've been going back and reading these old Game Informers and kind of seeing it happen.
Yeah.
Like the way that they're talking about it. It's like, wow, the Wii like really, because at the beginning it's just like on fire. It's just by far the most successful. And still, even though it fell off, the other ones still never caught it in terms of sales.
That's right. Yeah.
But so the beginning was like unbelievably strong, but then like it fell off so fast that they had to go to the Wii U. So it had really, and then of course the Wii U was a whole failure. And so like there really had been longer than you think of like Nintendo had just kind of been on the bottom, and then the Switch was like this huge return for them. And then the fact that they were doing a new game from Square Enix, it was not a Final Fantasy game, but it was in that style, which was a style of games that didn't really get made anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like today where there's plenty of kind of old school style JRPGs that are getting made, like from indie game teams and stuff, done not even just from Square. But back then, it was just kind of like a type of game that just didn't exist anymore.
That's right. It was like the first one to really come out.
Yeah, and so that's why
I remember these games. These are fun.
Yeah, I think that's why Octopath Traveler should get more credit of just being like a game changer kind of
Yeah, it really was.
of the industry.
Mhm.
And not only just because of just the art style, which I think was a game changer, but just like the HG2 style that like now, anytime they make like a new game or like a remake of a game from the old days, not so much with the pixel remaster, but but for like that Dragon Age thing that they're doing right now, or the Suikoden thing that they're doing, and then obviously the new games that are coming out, like, and they even like ported what was that Live Alive that was like a Japan exclusive,
Yeah.
which clearly was like an inspiration for Octopath Traveler with like its approach to having the different characters. But now it's just like such a thing that everybody's doing is this HD 2D thing, and I think it's all because of Octopath Traveler and because it was such a huge success.
It is all thanks to Octopath.
Yeah, so I think it should get some more respect. But what do you think about like obviously when you think of like a JRPG and really generally like the best ones, it's like one of the best things about it is like you're getting all these different characters and they're coming together and they have like this big quest, and it's just they all deal with like their own things on the way. They have like their own little side things that highlight them, but they're all kind of going for like one main goal. Whereas in Octopath Traveler, it was a lot more separate to where they each kind of had their own thing, and like they kind of work together, but their stories were like very much like focused on just kind of them. And in 2, they did a little bit more of mixing it together, but you haven't played 2 yet. But like, what did you think about that approach for Octopath 1 versus like a traditional Final Fantasy style?
I thought it would maybe bother me a little bit more when I first started it until I realized that the JRPG mechanics are just so good it doesn't even matter.
That is a good point.
And it's crazy how it plays because it's like it's a huge world. It's like
oh yeah,
it's like you're playing JRPG version of Skyrim.
It really is, yeah.
Because like go anywhere.
It even kind of has similar like environments. This Skyrim's got the beach, it's got the snow, it's got like the forest, areas, and it's got like the mountainous regions as well.
Yeah,
I think that's one thing that it definitely deserves a lot of credit for. And we're watching Game of Thrones right now, and I think that there was some inspiration there with the way they designed their map. Like
Yeah.
the intro to Game of Thrones, like if you pull up the map in Octopath Traveler, it's like all these spinning things for like no reason. It's like just like the way it's like laid out artistically is like really impressive. And yeah, I think that they do such a good job with that, and it makes and like the world is like feels so big. But and they do a good job of like you don't it's kind of a unique mechanic where in Final Fantasy you're kind of going on a journey. So like usually like I think about Final Fantasy VIII for instance, like you're on that area where the your garden is at first.
Hmm.
Then you kind of go off and you kind of leave that area behind. You don't really come back,
Yeah.
Whereas in Octopath Traveler, the characters' stories are all going all over the continent. And so you actually go back to these different areas. And so it
For
does
different
make it
people's
yeah,
stories.
so that kind of adds to like the Skyrim quality of it, where you're going back to these areas all the time. And so it
Hmm.
kind of feels like one big open world.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I agree. I thought that was really awesome. And then yeah, the mechanics of it are just crazy. I remember playing it and having played a decent amount of Final Fantasies when that came out. Obviously, I hadn't played all of the ones that I played now, but I had definitely played seven. I definitely played six. I don't know if I'd played nine or not, or I think I might have played it around the same time. But so I had some experience with those. But going from like the Final Fantasy style combat, which is obviously very good, to this style of turn-based combat, where I remember I couldn't believe how good it was. Like I literally every time I would get a random encounter, I was like excited. I
Hmm.
was like, awesome. That means I get to deal with this, these
Yeah.
mechanics some
I
more.
know.
And I've never felt that way with random games. I don't hate them like a lot of people do. They're to me they're always been like, yeah, whatever. It's just like a decent little. I understand why they exist, and I don't really think that the Chrono Trigger style of not having random encounters is that much better because you still like see them on the map, yeah, but I don't know. It's just to me it almost got more repetitive because it was like the same enemies every time you would leave and come back.
Yeah.
Whereas with Octopath Traveler, they first of all they did a better job than like Final Fantasy VI, for instance, of like having more variety in the random encounters.
And they weren't quite as often.
Yeah, and they definitely were quite yeah, especially Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah.
But then just like the combat mechanics were so good, I was just like, man, this is great. I'm
And
looking forward to doing this.
yeah, and everything kind of goes in with it, like the world, and like going to each town and like talking to every person about what you can get from them,
Oh
you can
yeah.
steal, get better
Yeah, the
items.
ability to interact with all the different everybody in the game because there's so many NPCs, but the fact they all have like a little story that they wrote for them, like where you kind of like ask them about their past or whatever, and then they have like a little thing that they'll give you in some ways, like maybe they'll reveal an item on the map that you can go get,
Hmm.
or you can like steal from them and they'll all have different things, or the fact that you can take them with you,
Yeah.
like every NPC in the game pretty much you can just take with you, and they
Yeah.
all have different things that they do. That is so crazy.
Yeah, it really is.
And Octopath Traveler 2, they even expanded that even more, where like more of them can bring them with you. So you can have like four townspeople with you at a time instead of just two. So that's just like nuts.
Yeah.
And then they have like different benefits and stuff as well. Like everything in Octopath Traveler 1 is even deeper in Octopath Traveler 2, which is crazy. And Octopath, I have the both my top 25, but the second one I have like even higher. It's just like so crazy good. But and then I guess like the last thing I don't think and two I think it was a little bit better than one, but like the music and it is also like high quality.
Very quality, yes.
We had that. Have you ever watched that video of that guy Alex talking about it, like talking about the Octopath Traveler One music?
I don't think so.
Oh man, it is just highly entertaining. He's being that Final Fantasy Peasants group.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, in terms of turn-based combat mechanics, I think Octopath Traveler is better than any of the Final Fantasy games. And I think it might be my number one. The only one that I would ever consider putting it on the same level is Chained Echoes, which I also played recently. And it's very different, but it's turn based. It doesn't have random encounters. We don't have to get into all that how it's all different, but that's the other one where in both modern style
Yeah.
JRPGs, I just think like there's like this renaissance right now of like the just and Brett's talking about Chain or Sea of Stars, which I haven't played yet, but he's talking about how it has his favorite, which he hasn't played, Chained Echoes and Octopath Traveler.
Yeah.
But like I just think right now, not only visually, the Octopath Traveler bringing that back, and they brought back the genre, but they're also, I think, improving the combat mechanics, and in some ways, like the leveling and job mechanics as well, are also
Yeah,
just
you're
really
right.
highly well done.
Yeah. Because that's like the thing is like it's so good that it doesn't really need like a crazy awesome story.
Right. And then what's crazy about two, which you'll find out whenever you ever play it, is they actually kind of did make some crazy awesome stories.
Yeah.
And on top of that, and they made the mechanics better, and they made the music better, and it's just like masterpiece. It's just one of the greatest games ever
Should
made.
probably get into that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on to number 15. Here we have Kingdom Hearts 1.
Kingdom Hearts.
We don't
1?
really probably have to spend too much time on it just
No.
because we have talked about a lot about it. But it is interesting that you ultimately agreed with me that you put it above too.
Yeah, I don't really know why, but
Well, maybe just the pacing.
Yeah.
That kind of what we talked about.
yeah, I think that might be it.
And you did like, I do feel like you just spent you might be a little bit more attached to it because you did go through, like, even I haven't done this, where you went through all the work of like getting the ultimate weapon and everything. And that was crazy because that was like on the original PS2 hardware you did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, because
That is nuts.
when I finished that game, I was basically like, yeah, I'm not done yet.
Yeah, you didn't want it to end.
I didn't.
I remember one time I was watching you. I was like hanging out with him while he was doing this. And like when you finish the game, you can like go back and do some of that stuff. They actually add like super bosses, and you didn't know that.
Yeah.
And like you went back to the Peter Pan world for
Yeah.
something, and then out of nowhere at the clock tower, that freaking ghost came out of like the Phantom or whatever.
Yeah.
You did not know he was gonna be there, and
Yeah.
it's like all of a sudden this cutscene started, and like they're flying, and all of a sudden here comes this freaking Phantom,
Yeah.
and he absolutely annihilated your ass.
Yeah, I had no
And
idea.
you were
that
just
too.
like, "What was that?" And I
That
was like, "Man,
but
I
it's
don't
awesome.
know."
It's awesome.
Yeah,
that
I
was
know.
in
It was
there.
so cool. And like I've actually gone back and I have defeated him, but there's another one that they added that I've never beaten, which is like this thing appears in the desert in the Aladdin world. And there's like this boss that appears out there, and it's just like crazy tough. And it's called Kurt Ziza, which is just a random name of like a random kid that entered like a drawing or something, and it was like, we'll name this boss after it.
That is
And
unreal.
it's Kurt Ziza. So there's some kid named Kurt Ziza.
See, that's why Kingdom Hearts 1's so good.
I know, it's just so like all these like random. That's one thing that there was like back then. There was like all these like mysterious elements in games, like hidden stuff.
And like using, especially for someone that knows like that has played Final Fantasy before, like having to use like time spells on the clock of Peter Pan world
Oh yeah,
to
that's
beat the
so
boss.
crazy.
It's so like smart
Yeah, that's so true.
to think of.
And honestly, like, because I have beaten that boss, you can only, well, not only because like that boss, like it's really what it is it's basically very similar to the Hell House. So except for more hardcore than the Hell House. So like it glows, it does like a different glow, and then that tells you what magic you have to use on him. And then if he glows white, then you just hit him with your sword or whatever. But like nothing else affects it at all. And so like, if you don't know that, then you're just like, well, like what you did. And you were just like, well, nothing I do hurts this guy. And then if you don't stop the clock, then he just does death and it's over.
Yeah.
It's just a very creative, like classic square boss.
Yep.
That like updated to, not turn-based combat.
Yeah. Or in just the PS2 era, and
Yeah.
just to be in the PS2 era doing that stuff,
Yeah, no, that's another thing. Is like, yeah, and it's kind of how it was on the PS1 as well. Like you go back and play most PS1 games, like they're kind of, yeah, there's standouts like Spyro and stuff and Crash Team Racing, but most of them are kind of, even like the good ones for the time, like for instance like Metal Gear Solid or something, or Tomb Raider games that were considered like really good at the time. It's like if you go back to them now, it's just they're all right at best,
Yeah.
But if you go back and play Final Fantasy or or on PS2, if you go back and play Kingdom Hearts, it's like, man, this is still like one of the greatest things ever.
Yeah. It really
It's
is.
just they were just so far ahead of everybody else. So
Yeah.
okay,
Well, the
oh,
reason that I'm more attached to Kingdom Hearts 1, I think, than 2 is because that was like the first time I ever enjoyed a game in a way that I did with that one. Whereas
Yeah.
like I'd never really like played games that had any types of great story or characters at all.
right. Yeah, because we were just kind of playing. I mean, you had your Game Boy Advance games, I guess, and even me, like on the PS1, like like those games where that's just not what it was about. Like
Yeah.
playing Spyro, for instance. Like I remember Year of the Dragon. To me, that was like a good story.
Mhm.
Like as a kid, like Hunter gets
Yeah.
abducted by the
Same as
sorceress,
kids,
and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And like,
gonna happen.
yeah, exactly. And like to me, that was like the peak storytelling in games.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, obviously when you get really what it is when we play Kingdom Hearts, that was the first time we had experienced like what a 10 is basically.
Yeah.
Or, if you were 975, whatever. But like we never played a game on that level before.
Yeah. And it really like hit me. I feel like no other game could until Final Fantasy VII after that. 'Cause think about like even after that, I was playing all sorts of games like Skyrim and stuff. I'm not playing it for that same thing. I'm playing Skyrim for like open world. I'm playing all the other games for different things. But that was like the first time I was like, oh,
Yeah, you're playing a game for the story and characters.
yeah, oh, this is actually very important.
Yeah, which like today is kind of our still our favorite, really. Like
Yeah.
there are definitely you play games for different reasons. Like Halo, you play it for the quality level design and you know Crash Team Racing, you play it for the quality mechanics and just the fun of it and
Hmm.
stuff like that. Smash Bros similar,
Yeah.
but yeah, then there's like these games that you play for the story characters, and that was yeah, I agree. That was I think for us because we hadn't played the PS1 Final Fantasies or anything like that, JRPGs really. Like the only JRPGs we'd play was like
It was
Pokemon.
my first introduction to something like that, and especially like
Yeah, I think mine too.
the ending of Kingdom Hearts 1. I was really young when I saw
Oh,
it.
I remember. Yeah, because we were like in my room when I finally got there,
Yeah.
and I did it. You know, we did it. And we watched it, and then like I remember we just like sat there talking about it for like we had like
The picture
the
up
end.
there.
Yeah, it's like the end or whatever
Uh-huh.
screen. It was just like playing the music of like the main theme or whatever,
Yeah. And
and
then you like sit there and talk about it as if you just like watched a movie or a show and you're
yeah,
still
like
talking about
yeah,
it.
and it's just like
But it was like, I don't know, I never had a show or a movie give me that good of a feeling
right,
that
yeah.
a game. For some reason, it felt different, I guess, because it's so many hours and you're playing.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely the closest for arcs, storytelling arcs. Video games are a lot closer to like a long show
Yeah.
than with multiple
Hmm.
seasons than
Yeah.
like anything else. Yeah. And so yeah, it was the first time. Yeah, it's probably like how and also it's not like a game that we beat right away either. It was a game that we were working on for
That's
years.
what made the ending felt so crazy to have
Yeah.
such a crazy good ending, and like, it's literally taken 7 years to like try to beat this
Yeah,
game.
exactly. Whereas now, you know, you can get through it in probably like a week or two.
Yeah.
But back then, it's just yeah, it's just so interesting to think about. Like things were just very different back then. Like it just took you longer for something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just weren't good enough for whatever.
Yeah.
Just like you know, there were other things that you could play, and you know, yeah, like probably had more limited attention span back then. So
Yeah, for sure.
get distracted. But yeah,
Definitely.
like a Shadow of the Colossus is another one for me. Like I could beat that game now in probably a day easily.
Yeah, but it sure took
But it took
y'all.
us that years to beat it back
Yeah.
when it came
It's
out.
weird to think about.
Yeah. Okay, number 14. This is an interesting one. This is one of the a more modern choice. The first one in this series on your list.
Hmm.
It's Final Fantasy 15.
15.
Yes.
Interesting one to talk about.
Would you say where would you say in terms of where would you rank it in terms of the most underrated Final Fantasy games?
Underrated?
Yeah.
Well, 15 is so complicated to talk about. Because I guess if you're talking about how the game is now,
Yeah.
well, that's the thing, is how underrated is it? Because it's sold like a lot of copies.
That's true. In terms of sales, it's really not underrated.
Yeah.
But in terms of
People talking about it, I
I
guess.
feel like the critical reaction to it, which was good, but I remember like at the time thinking, oh, it must be like one of the worst ones because like Game Informer gave it like an 8.5. For
Right.
Final Fantasy standards is very low.
Yeah.
And I remember Brett even saying like he came into I think I was when I was in that back room in Main Pappy's like that spare bedroom that I used. He came in, he was like, what do you think about 15? Are you like are you interested in that? Because yeah, he was the one that got into 15 for us.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't know. I think it must be one of the worst ones because I think Sean even we had a similar conversation where I was like, yeah, it seems like it kind of got lower scores than all the others.
Than
So,
every other one.
not really that interested. And we were kind of like new to Final Fantasy at this time, so we were a lot more interested in going back and playing like the ones everybody says are like the best.
Right.
And so like we were not that interested in 15. And then Brett played it and he was like, you guys need to play this immediately. Because
Yeah.
he just thought it was so awesome. And there was like that story where he talks about because he would stream it. He was big streaming back then, and he walked in. He was doing that Leviathan fight or whatever.
Yeah.
You were like, you just stopped in your tracks,
I was like, we're gonna go to El Nagalito,
Yeah.
and then I just saw Leviathan just
and you just
towering over
flying
the
through the
water.
air fighting him.
You know, it's just like,
And he was like, "Yeah, I can't go right now." And you're like, "I understand."
yeah, like, yeah, understand.
But yeah, but now I just feel like Final Fantasy 15. I just don't know if it gets the respect it deserves.
It probably doesn't, because most people that crap on it, they have they're left soured with the day one purchase.
That is a good point. Yeah, the Final Fantasy 15 that you can play today is very different from the Final Fantasy that you can
Yeah,
play.
and there's a lot of people that waited over 10 years for this crazy hype.
That is a good point because it was literally yeah. So that's an interesting one to bring up for me because that's another one that I don't even always think of it in that way of the versus 13 stuff because
Mhm.
I just kind of think of it now because I love it. It's a game that I love and I just think of it as Final Fantasy 15. But I subscribed to Game Informer in 2005. I was like 11. And 2006 is, I think, is when they first started talking about Versus 13. And I remember seeing like the screenshots of Noctis in the car, and like that's
Yeah.
that original trailer,
Yeah.
in those pages of Game Informer, being like, "Wow, this looks crazy." Versus 13. I remember thinking that's a weird title. And 13 was nowhere near out. That didn't come out until like 2009. And I'm reading about this in 2006. I don't even know if 12 was out yet,
Oh God.
because it came out in 2006.
Huge
And
mistake.
and then I was just like, wow. And like everyone's, and I remember like even thinking about during this time, during like, I wasn't like somebody that was like super hyped about it because I hadn't played any Final Fantasies yet at that time in my life. But I remember thinking it looked cool. I played Kingdom Hearts, and obviously I could tell it looked similar. But I remember even thinking in the back of my head, just being like, I remember in like years ago reading that about Final Fantasy Versus 13. Did that ever? So I was like, did that ever come out or like? And then like I found out that was actually, it was like the Chinese democracy of video games.
Yeah, literally.
And so yeah, I now it's kind of like with the Final Fantasy characters in Kingdom Hearts. I don't really think about all that, but yeah, for people, that was like it'd been something I've been waiting for literally 10 years.
Oh yeah, over 10 years, and
So they
then
probably had high expectations.
extremely high. And let's be honest, day one purchase, like there's a lot of stuff in there that's just not in the game that is now. Like so many cutscenes,
Yeah,
so
that they've
mu-
added over
so
the
many
years.
good cutscenes, so many like really good.
Yeah, all the DLC stuff.
all the DLC stuff, which is very important. The movie, the show.
And a big complaint in Reiner's review was the car, which because he didn't feel like he had enough control. But then like I remember when I played it, you could literally go off road in that freaking buggy for whatever,
You
like
can literally put like monster truck tires and
just go all over the
Just
place.
go
And
off.
I was just like, what is he talking about? You can do whatever you want.
yeah, you can do it.
And so like it's just like the game changed so much like
Yeah,
it came out.
yeah. So I guess I get it for people that feel like they've been were ripped, because that's another thing. Is what they paid $60 for the day.
Oh yeah,
one,
definitely.
and now you can get like the Royal Edition for like less than 10.
Yeah.
And
You know what's interesting about this that makes me think about it is I remember, so you remember in Fallout, or when Fallout 4 came out, I just played nothing else for like a solid year and a half.
Mhm.
It's just like a black hole of my life where I literally played
Yeah.
nothing but Fallout 4. And then I remember there was that day at GameStop. We went to GameStop and I was like, I think I'm ready. I've played hundreds and hundreds of hours of Fallout 4. I think I'm ready for something new. We went to that GameStop, and what I ultimately came out of there with was The Witcher 3, which is an excellent choice.
Yeah,
But 15 was my number 2. Like I remember seeing the cover in there and the original cover too, where it's like, which I think is better than the Royal Edition cover, which is just like Noctis's face. But in the original, it's like the whole party. He's got that sword and like it's like all glowy. You know what I'm talking
Yeah, it
about?
looks awesome.
It's like such a good cover. And I remember seeing that, and I had it in my hand, and I was like, I think the reason I didn't get that and I got The Witcher was because they were showing The Witcher on TV, and I was like, God damn, that looks amazing. I'm gonna play that. But Final Fantasy 15 was right there, so I almost did it then, and then I would have been one of those people because that was like the day one edition. It was like new at that time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had all the royal stuff that I got later.
And I do think it's the day one release versus what is now is much worse. It's much a worse game.
Right, but that doesn't matter. It's not. That doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter anymore.
But it mattered at the time, so that's
Right.
probably why I kind of had lower scores. And here's another thing. So I understand what people are coming from when they're like, well, they should all this stuff should have been there from the beginning. You shouldn't have to watch that movie. You shouldn't have to watch that anime that they did. But see, I come at it from a different angle where to me, it's like a unique experience that's unlike any other game that you can do all that.
Yeah,
stuff with.
it kind of is. It's like you can experience 15 in all sorts of different media.
Yeah, and I kind of think that's awesome.
It kind of is.
And so like to me, it almost like kind of boosts it in a way. Whereas like I think for most people it's like a negative. I kind of view it as a positive.
I mean, in today's day and age, I definitely agree, because I mean, I think all of those things add a lot to 15 and make it a lot better.
Right.
They should have done more with Luna.
Definitely. And they were gonna have the Luna DLC.
Yeah, I know.
They didn't even. They still never finished exactly
No.
what they had set out to do.
They never did. The 15 is still incomplete.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy to think about. But another thing that was a big deal at the time, obviously, first of all, this was the first Final Fantasy game on PS4, so it was the first time we kind of saw, like, I feel like the modern look of a Final Fantasy game, just that we had access to. Because before that, it was 13 on like the PS3.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that was like a big deal, and they just looked amazing at the time. And then also the open world aspect of it was just kind of crazy at the time.
It is, and I have my problems with the open world, like, but I also have things I like about it. Like, magic is kind of weird, but
Very weird.
But at the same time, once you
get into it.
it becomes broken in a very powerful way.
Yeah, and fun.
Yeah, and it becomes very easy to like get really strong using magic.
Right, and so when I found that out, I was like, "Well, this is awesome." And so then I would do it all the time. It had kind of like an 8 style where you do the draw,
Hmm.
and then yeah, you do this. You can compose. It's like then it's like almost like that key marks birth by sleep, whatever. That compose spells,
Yeah.
and then and then they're just like basically nukes. You just set them off, and then they just explode like
Yeah,
crazy.
they all do like over like 9999.
Yeah, and then I remember killing that, that behemoth quest kind of in the
Yeah,
game. Like I
yeah.
remember just absolutely annihilating the behemoth with the spell. And another thing that's hilarious about the spells too is like for some reason they made it to where it hurts your party, so they're just always like they're always in the way. There's nothing you can do about it. So if you just do a spell, they're always just like freaking out, like they just got annihilated, and there's no subtlety at all. They're not just like, oh man, that was crazy. They're like,
I know they freak out when they get hit.
and so, like to me, that almost adds to the charm of it as well. It's just like how ridiculous it
Yeah,
is.
I kind of enjoy the magic, but yeah, the open world it's very nice looking, but it is a little bit empty-ish.
Definitely.
There's nothing in it. I think that kind of works in favor of it to a degree because unlike something like in Rebirth where there's like a checklist,
Hmm. There isn't really,
or like where you can see, oh, I need to go to this area. I'm just gonna walk directly
yeah,
to
it
it.
doesn't really have that.
It's more like a Skyrim type thing where it's like just go out and find something. It's like
Yeah.
you don't know what's gonna be out there. You're just going.
Yeah, except for it's a lot bigger because they wanted it to. They were going for like that road trip feel, so they made like
Mhm.
long distances between all the stuff. And that was the thing that Reiner didn't like. 'Cause
Right.
he felt like there was too much downtime in the car. And I do think they should have done more with the car. Like they definitely should have had like a bunch of things that they should have been able to be talking about in the car. But mostly they just kind of sat there and they didn't really say anything.
Mhm.
That's a mistake. But at the same time, they give you all those different Final Fantasy soundtracks to pull from. So if you're a fan of the series like us, that was a fun element.
Yeah.
Just like seeing what they put in. Like you go to a new gas station, like, oh man, what
Yeah.
album they gonna have?
I know.
here?
I agree. And the hunts and everything is kind of like endless. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like it's kind of just like when you want to go do open world, it's there for you.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can always just go do it. But
Yeah, it's shocking to me. I remember the first time I played it, I pretty much did a lot of main path stuff, and then the second time I played it, I've only played twice. Second time I played it, I did a lot more of that stuff.
uh-huh.
And now whenever I play it again, I'll do it even more because I want to get the platinum trophy because I wasn't into trophies back then. It shows you how long it's been since I played it because I got into trophies in 2020.
Yeah.
And so I think it's 2019 when I played it last.
Been a long time.
And I played it for like the whole year too. Like I spread it out. I'm just like really just picking away at and doing a lot of extra stuff in the open world. But yeah, I'm surprised every time I go back and look at it how much stuff is in there. Like there's all these hidden, like you talk about, like dungeons.
Yeah,
That
there's a lot. There's a lot. Like, you just go out and kind of like find something. Hey, oh,
Yeah.
a new gas station. Oh, a new cave. A new.
Yeah, it's really kind of surprising
And-
how much stuff is out there.
I think that works for it for a while. I'd say like once you like once you're able to be strong enough to like fight the things that come out at night, then
Oh yeah, right.
once you get to that point, the open world kind of starts to be pointless because you're like, all right, I'm like extremely powerful at this
Right.
point. There's like really nothing left to do.
Yeah, but that's true. But I like that element in like the first hours of the game where you cannot
It's
do
way
that.
more fun.
It's so awesome. Yeah.
Than it should be.
It's like whenever it's really when you're playing the game the way they expected you to, where
Yeah.
you are actually doing what you said for going and setting up the camps and you're, fearing the night and then like you're making the food and you're looking at the pictures that Prompto
Yeah.
took for you. It's like when you do all that stuff and you really buy into all of it and you do it
It's
like
really
how they
good.
planned, it is awesome.
It's great. It just the thing is, it doesn't last forever. It gets to a point because it has the midpoint through the game where all that kind of
Yeah, it's
stops,
just gone.
and then it's straight linear.
Right.
But for the first few sections of that open
Yeah.
world,
It's surprising how amazing it is.
it's surprisingly fun.
Yeah. And then also the combat system was like people had different opinions on it because like it is very simple.
Yeah.
There's really not a whole lot to it. And yet confusing whenever you play it the first time. You like don't feel like you're doing it right.
Yeah,
No
no,
way.
I know what you mean.
I remember thinking that way. But and yeah, I still think it is definitely simplistic. Like compared to something like 16, it's like pales in comparison, obviously. But
Yeah.
at the same time, that warp strike mechanic is just always fun. It's always satisfying to do that.
It is.
And so like there's like these elements of it that it does better than the other Final Fantasy games, I would say. So it's just such a interesting game.
I guess like like the warp strike is great, and the story is great. Like 15 story, like these days Royal Edition, you have all the outside
I would say
stuff.
better than 16's.
It might be. It's very, very good. And I think that it was not like up to that standard when it first came
Right,
out.
right,
But
right. Yeah, like at the end with like all the summons and stuff. It's just
yeah.
insane seeing it wasn't in the game at
Yeah, it just
first.
was not in the game. I
Yeah.
still see people posting about that and like it's too bad like man, this 15's great. Just imagine seeing this scene and saying it's not great and people being like, well,
Oh, he didn't.
too bad it wasn't on release. And then they're like, it wasn't?
Yeah, I know. People don't understand.
People
how
don't
much
know. Yeah.
It's so crazy. And then another thing that we haven't even talked about yet is Arden.
Oh yeah, Arden, one of the greatest FF villains.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, I have Sephiroth. Sephiroth's my favorite. But honestly, if I was just looking at it objectively, and I like came to it now, I'm not even like talking about playing it at the time, but like playing it now, if you did everything in order of like the way you're supposed to, watch
Mhm.
the movie, and everything, did his DLC, he might be the best.
Yeah.
It is crazy, like how much like backstory they created for him, and like how, he of all of the villains, like his like he's kind of like the opposite of, even though I think he was inspired by Kefka in some ways because I kind of made him gesterish. Like he's like kind of like the opposite in a way because like Kefka's just like kind of the classic crazy villain, Joffrey style crazy villain.
But Arden knows exactly what's
But
going
Arden
on.
is like he was screwed.
Yeah.
Whereas like Sephiroth, like he's like I like Sephiroth is kind of like my favorite version of a villain in a way, where it's like I just really love that idea of a guy that was like this superhero type thing. Like he was just like this war hero that goes bad because like he kind of has like a Joker arc where he has a bad day and then
Yeah.
it kind of goes off the rails after that. Whereas like with Arden, he never goes off the rails.
Yeah.
He was just like eventually he just can't do that. He just because he's like he reminds me of like before his turn is he's like Alphen from Octopath Traveler. He's just like this healer that goes around and is like healing everybody.
Yeah, that's
And then like
is
he just
true.
goes from that to being like that villain. And I just think that is if you get it if you experience it the way that you can today, what you
Yeah.
couldn't back then,
Mhm.
then I think he might be like the best that they've ever done.
Yeah, he might be. And there's a lot of people that agree with that. Even 15 haters that, have experienced all that there is to offer with 15 nowadays. They're like, yeah, Arden is, don't disrespect Arden. Like
Yeah.
he's up there.
And I've been thinking about so every year for my birthday, what we do with Reagan, I do is like we pick I usually will do a game. Like I remember a couple years ago it was Fall 3, and then I don't remember what it was this last time. Might have been New Vegas, but we'll pick like a game, and before that was like 7 Remake. We'll pick a game that we're playing right that day or that we're into at that time. We just do nothing that day else. Like I take the day off and we just go crazy. And I wonder, and this year I'm thinking about just doing 15.
It might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, because I'm very curious to see what get Reagan's thoughts on just Arden and like really like I kind of planned out like a chronology like a way that you could do it to where like because you don't even watch Kingslave at the beginning if you're watching it if you're doing it in chronological order.
Technically
You
not.
do chapter 1 first,
Yeah.
and then you watch Kingslave because like the capital is not fallen yet
No.
whenever you
Yeah, when you
start the
leave.
game. So it's just like I looked up like this chronological thing, and it's like, man, if I actually like pull that off with her, that could be really special.
Yeah.
And like mixing in like the movie and mixing in like the show, which that enhanced it a lot for me was that little anime, even though like it's not like important, you don't have to have it.
I
But
love the anime. There's also an Arden anime too.
exactly that they added. Yeah, the
Very
fact
good.
that the DLC came out like what 4 years after the game launched, that
Yeah.
Arden, it was just like so nuts. And I remember it came out, I think literally might have been on my birthday. It was definitely March 2020. Or maybe it's 2019. But I just remember it must have been 2019. That was why I played it in 2019. Now I'm thinking about it. But I just remember the hype for it coming out. I was like, man, I cannot believe it. We're gonna get this Arden DLC. I'm so excited.
Yeah. I'm so excited.
Yeah. And just like I was like maybe the most excited I've ever been for a DLC.
Yeah, me too, honestly, because I was just excited to see his story.
Yeah. And then it was like kind of, and then like, but to hype it up before it came out was when they did that Arden anime. And it was
Yeah.
like, holy crap.
Yeah,
look
the
at this.
anime was nuts.
Yeah, gosh. So anyway, you put all that together, I just think Arden is just maybe the best.
Yeah.
If you just look at it like objectively, like Sephiroth's always gonna be my favorite, but man, Arden, he's in terms of just the story that they wrote, it's like wow, it's high quality.
Yep. And yeah, 15 is pretty good, despite what people will say.
Yeah. And then number 13, you have another interesting, and I think we're gonna stop it after this one, and we'll split this episode into two halves, kind of like what we did with the Sean podcast. But for the last one for this episode, Final Fantasy VIII.
8.
That's right.
Shocking.
That's what you have here. So this is pushing the boundaries a little bit of what qualifies for being on your list, because technically you have not finished Final Fantasy VIII.
I'm right at
But
the
you
end.
have like gone all the way to the end.
I've done so much in that game though, because I was following that PS.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So what's interesting about that guy, now that I think about it, is I think the first game that I think actually might have been Octopath Traveler, might have been the first one that I used. But I remember it was around 2019 whenever I found out that a guide existed, and I used it for Octopath Traveler. I used it for Kingdom Hearts, and I played it around that time, and I used it for Final Fantasy 15 whenever I was like kind of trying to be more completionist about it, and that was like a really good guide 15. But they have a lot of really high quality guides for Final Fantasy. It's called Gamer Guides, and they did one for 8, and that one is just too far, I think, in terms of being complete. But just because part of that is just because of how crazy the mechanics of Final Fantasy 8 are, that it's possible to do that.
That is why that the guide is so messed up, because the mechanics are ridiculous. They're out there. That team that
I don't even know how they came up with something.
I don't either. That
Because no other game before or since has ever even sort of worked like Final Fantasy 8 does.
No, it really hasn't.
Yeah.
That team that did FF8, they just wanted to do something completely different, I guess, because
Which
man.
yeah, I mean you got to give them some credit for that, because they were riding high of
After
all
7.
yeah, they were at their peak of popularity, because like people, I remember at that time when we were growing up, we kind of looked at 6 as being the best because that's just what everybody said on the list. But which I don't think you see it quite as much today as maybe you did back then. But it's still pretty. It's unsurprising if you look at a Final Fantasy list. Like 6 has a pretty good chance of being number one. But back then, like in terms of its popularity, it's like not even close to 7 levels.
No.
And so they were just had never been on this peak this high before.
No, and it paid off, and I think largely it's because of like how the game looks, the game design. It's all more realistic and stuff. Because that 7 was headed more in that direction, even though
they just couldn't really do it yet
because the graphics were so bad.
But and the 8, kind of if you honestly like the original graphics 8 are also pretty rough. But
yeah, but at the time people were probably
at the time it was very impressive. Yeah, it was. Yeah, you've seen that video of Rob. To PlayStation Access. I can't believe it, because that was like the first time they were like actually mixing in the pre-rendered stuff with the actual gameplay, and you weren't doing much. You're like running away from that thing, or there's a shot that thing later on where you're like, it's a ridiculous sequence. You're like fighting that robot thing, and you're like flying through the air, and like or the train sequence as well. Like there's just like they're mixing in like with these FMVs with the actual gameplay, and like. Another thing that was like that game reminds me of Digimon World 2 in some ways, like the way they do like their menus and like kind of like the digital kind of aspect of it. It's just like I don't know, like there's like this approach to art and like computers and things like that back then, that of those PS1 games in that era that kind of all looked like that. And I think I haven't played it, but from what I've seen of what is it? Not Chrono, Xenogears. It kind of has that too, where it's like kind of like that Digimon World 2 kind of.
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
and I also love it.
Yes,
and that vibe, Balam Garden really gives that to me.
Yes, definitely.
And I think it's because
particularly when you're like on the computer at the beginning, and you're
the computer.
Yeah. Or another example is like whenever there's like the missile launch, and you're like trying to like divert the
selfie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think partly what it is late 90s people's ideas of what the future would look like was out there.
Yeah, it was.
And I think that's kind of where a lot of that
Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
All the stuff, the numbers and stuff. Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of that like Digimon and like weird looking stuff kind of comes from.
Yeah.
Like they didn't know what the future would really look like. No. So they were kind of, had their own idea of what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I love the vibe of
I do too. And then, so what do you actually think about the Junction System? Like having experienced it and it being so different, like, what did you think? Did you like it?
I'm not a biggest fan of how all the systems work together. I mean, if you didn't have the remastered version of FF8, drawing would be horrible, especially if you really want to min-max it, because you'd just be sitting there drawing shit for hours.
Oh yeah, because you can't speed it up
to get 100 spells. Yeah.
That's true.
And just like certain things like that, the card system being so heavily involved with like being broken.
Because you convert the cards
into items, which you can turn into spells, and you can turn some cards straight into spells. And you had to link your spells to your stats to make them stronger.
Which it disincentivized you from using them.
Well, so you
unlike other Final Fantasy, like 7, I remember we had a learning curve where we needed to learn to use the spells more because it upgrades your materia
Yeah.
and also does more damage.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, it's the opposite. It's like you want to not use your spells. You just want to put them on your stats.
Yeah.
But different spells affect your different stats differently.
Right.
So you have to like figure out.
Yeah.
In the
So
beginning, it's all about tornado.
yeah, tornadoes are it's very powerful.
Yeah, put that on your weapon and be doing some one shots on some bosses.
Yeah.
Especially if you can get the timing down for the trigger.
I love that trigger.
It's cool.
I really do love that trigger. But yeah, most of the other parts of like I don't really think I enjoy like combat or like the whole systems as much as I do like something like 6 or 7. Or,
Yeah, I agree. And
or
it's hard to even know how I feel about the combat because I just was so broken that I barely
that's the thing
experienced
is that it's so weird. And people get themselves in weird situations because like the monsters level with you. So there's people that like
Right, yeah, that's right. You can't if you sometimes in some ways if you grind incorrectly, you make the game harder.
because you could grind your levels extremely high, but not give a crap about
Your
what
stats,
your
yeah.
spells
Right.
that you have. So then to link to your stats, so then
Yeah, it can be harder for you.
You could be literally just stuck. You can end up stuck, you know.
That is so crazy.
Um,
What a weird game. It's just like
it's weird.
baffling. It's like somebody who does not know have any idea about how to make a JRPG made it.
Yeah.
But yet they're the JRPG masters at Square. They just decided they wanted to do something very different. And
Yeah.
they did.
And I think that's partly what it is. Developers I think they were just kind of because
Well, they had made like 7 Final Fantasy games.
I
so-
know, but I think specifically that 4 through 7 run, they were just like there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, because
between
4 is when they invented like the
ATB.
yeah.
So I think there's just a lot of similarities between all of them. I think they're just getting tired of it, wanting to do something different.
Well, they did. They definitely did something different.
And
They never did it again.
Yeah, never did.
So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
But I agree. Like it does make that game seem very unique, and it's like a very
There's something kind of fun
charming.
about it.
Yeah,
though.
yeah, there is.
And
It's a
the-
unique experience.
Yeah, I don't love the overall
Story.
story and a lot of the characters. I
Yeah.
feel like,
I
but
think because some of the weakest agreed.
yeah, but there also is some good story moments, like
Definitely.
all the Laguna stuff.
Oh yeah, that blew my. I had coming into that game. Obviously, I didn't know all the cast because there's only 6, so it's a small cast. But I obviously knew Sylvie from Kingdom Hearts.
Mhm.
I knew Squall from Kingdom Hearts. So like I kind of knew that. I knew that there was like kind of like a love story with no, I didn't know what her name was, but like I knew that she's obviously in the emblem, like in the logo of the
Right,
game.
yeah.
So like I knew that was going to be a thing. I certainly didn't know anything about Zell. I didn't know anything about Quistis.
Right.
And I certainly didn't know anything about that sniper guy, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Irvin.
Yeah, so Irvin Kinius. They always say, for some reason, they always say both of his names.
Yeah.
Let's call him Irvin Kinius
Yeah.
instead of just Irvin.
I enjoy him a lot.
I did too, yeah. Like but there are like these. I agree that overall, and particularly like the end, is just like it does the kind of that Final Fantasy thing that I'm not crazy about. That some of them do, where it's just like you don't really even battle the villain until like the very end. It's not like Sephiroth, which part of the reason why Sephiroth was so awesome at the time is like they built him up from the beginning. Whereas like with 8, they kind of built up that witch because she was taking over the mind of the the characters.
I don't hate the idea. It's
Yeah,
not bad.
It's not, but and I would say that is better than like 4's with the moon presence or 9 with the whatever that thing is that you fight at the end of 9. But it's still not. I don't like that as much as like just having a great villain like a Sephiroth or Arden or a Kefka even
Yeah.
that they build up throughout the game.
Yeah, the story and the characters just don't hit the same for me as like they do in other Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I just think they're just not as well written as the others.
Yeah.
that
But
was it.
however, the world
It's really well done.
is very awesome in that secret city that's just like insane.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was crazy. I did not see that coming.
No, and every other part of the world too, like there's the fishing garden place where they just don't want any war. It's like
It's a good
peace.
spot, yeah.
Like and
I love that cutscene when your thing's crashing and that fisherman's just sitting there and he just looks up and he's like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
he has to run for it, and then he ends up being like an actual character. Like I thought it was just a joke, but then like you talk to him and he's
No,
like actually
yeah.
the leader of the whole crew.
yeah, he's in charge the whole time.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, the world is really good and a lot of just like the moments that happen.
Yeah,
like,
it does have some really good standout moments. It has like you said, all the lagoon stuff which I had no idea was going to happen. But
and
even
just like the sequences, like train sequence,
the train
or
sequence
the end
is really
of this
great.
one
Yeah,
sequence.
yes. Oh my gosh, with the botched sniper assassination.
Mhm.
Oh my lord, I was like so invested in that because like I had no idea what was going to happen, and so he gets up there and he's just like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I was like, He's like trying to talk him through it. And
Yeah.
then like he finally like he works up to it, he takes the shot, it's on target. He's like he's got her dead to rights.
Right.
And it's just boop, just blocks it. And then Squall's like, well, I gotta go. Cause he's like the plan B.
Right, yeah.
And he just immediately just jumps down there and makes a break for it. And then like they even have like a cliffhanger kind of ending where she
Mhm.
like stabs him with the ice. It's like,
That's right.
you know, like if you hadn't played the game, I mean, I didn't actually think that he was going to be gone there, but you know, it's kind of like a Last of Us Joel moment where he gets injured and then it like cuts forward in time. You're like, well, what happened? Like, is he still with us?
Well, there's a lot of people who think that's where he died.
Yeah, I know.
There's that whole theory.
Yeah, I know.
Which is dumb, but
yeah.
yeah, overall that game is pretty fun because I really like just like the sequences that happen in it.
Yeah, I do agree that it has some really good standout moments. I think that first Laguna flashback in ridiculous.
And also I
is
think a lot of the dialogue is genuinely really funny.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that it is as well. And then I actually think even though I'm not as it doesn't have as a special a place in my heart just because I played it the most recently of them. I only played it for the first time a few years ago. I actually think if you kind of look at it objectively, I might go for eight's soundtrack above the rest of the PS1 era. Like
That's close.
I know I love them all in different ways, but nine it has like really high highs, but it also has some lows.
Yeah.
And even Final Fantasy 7, I would say like it's more consistent I think than nine, but the high points of eight are really high.
Yeah.
Like and like I just think it did a really good job with some of the kind of random songs. Like there's like the one that it plays like in the early towns I really love. It's like do 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 do
Uh-huh.
do.
Oh, the breezy one?
Yeah, Breezy is what it's
Oh,
called.
man, that's
I
a good song.
really love that one. And
I even like the Ballum Gardens song.
yeah, oh boy, I heard it a lot.
Me too.
And going around doing those cards. And just another thing, I really think that he nailed the final boss music. It's almost like kind of a little bit of a Dancing Mad kind of where it starts very slow with the piano and then like builds and builds. Like I think it's like a really strong piece of
That's
music.
cool.
And I'm in some ways I almost like it. It's almost like I would say it's on the level of Dancing Mad in terms of its
It's
quality.
extremely high praise.
It is extremely high praise, yes. And then there's like this whole sequence at the end that where it's kind of like after it's over and you beat the boss, and then like there's like this original piece of music that he wrote for that where it's like it kind of brings in a little bit of the motifs of Multimedia, where it's the
Yeah.
or whatever, kind of similar to Sephiroth. But it's like they bring that into he like brings that into like this music that's like kind of ominous. It's like, is she really gone? And then like it kind of has like this like kind of good resolution to it. It's called The Successor.
Mhm.
It's like that's another really great piece of music. And like particularly like the TPR versions, arrangements of some of these are just like really strong. There's this one that is kind of weird in the game because it's like Nobuo Uematsu using weird music, but the music of like that crazy city that you uncover
Yeah.
is like really weird. But if you listen to it like on piano, like the actual progression of the music, it's like also like really awesome.
Yeah.
So there's just I think that it's like I think it's my favorite of the PS1 soundtracks that he did, like overall. So that's the thing that I have to say for 8. So yeah, it's a weird one. I definitely agree with you that it is the lowest of the PS1 Final Fantasies. But
One more thing about FF8. If you want, so this helps me a lot for this game. If you want to get the full appreciation out of it as possible, the Resonant Arc,
oh, I see. I haven't watched this. I still have to do that.
I know the Resonant Arc FF8 podcast series will make anyone that doesn't like that game like it. I feel like
I've got to listen to that
because they are kind of two people who are kind of on the fence about it anyway, and
Okay.
they go so deep into it. They're like, yeah, I kind of think we kind of have to say this is an awesome game because of all the details they find
Oh man,
and stuff. So
yeah, I'm gonna put that on my priority list of just like podcasts I need to listen
yeah,
to.
you should.
Okay, well that's great. And that is the Resident Arc. I've been like kind of into them recently anyway. They've been doing a lot of really good stuff. And you've been watching them since the Dark Pixel days.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
The old Final, whenever he was just doing kind of smaller videos, but just talking about the Final Fantasies. But they've been doing a lot of good stuff, like with the best intros, and they did specifically best Final Fantasy.
They know what
intros.
they're doing right now. They're popping off.
They are popping off. And then most recently, I don't know if you saw this, but they did the one where it was like they kind of tried to objectively compare PlayStations with Nintendo consoles through
yeah.
and like he kind of came up with this criteria that I really liked, and I'm planning on doing an episode that kind of it changes a little bit and expands on the criteria that he used. to come up with like the best consoles just of all time. It's it got some stuff, and I've been working on that for actually weeks and weeks, probably over a month at this point. So you can plan on that one coming eventually. I'll make an episode about that. But for now, we will leave it there. We'll do your top 12 when we come back for the next episode. So look forward to that. But it's going to be good to have this on the board. I think you're the 5th person I've done the top 25 with, because I haven't done Brett's yet, but I did mine. I did Reagan's. I did this guy Chase, who his grandma lives next door, and he came over and did his top 25.
Yeah.
He's come out. He's hung out with me a couple times. That was pretty interesting. I did Sean's. So yeah, I think you are number 5, and I'm doing this thing where I'm gonna get yours. I'm gonna get Brett's. I might do Lauren's if she wants to do it. I would even be interested in maybe doing Jet's if he wants to do it. That would be an interesting. I have no idea what he would pick.
You should, yeah, you should.
But I want to like put all these together and to make like a ControlledBurnes version of like the greatest games of all time.
That would be awesome.
And obviously Final Fantasy is gonna do quite well, but
Of course.
because Brett's are also very high on Brett's list. But
Although it won't be on Jet's list probably. We'll get him to do it.
But believe it or not, Chase had only one Final Fantasy game on his list, and it was Final Fantasy 15.
Wow.
So you never know what could
Damn,
happen. Yeah, I
15.
think it's gonna have some inflated presence
It might.
because of that. But so yeah, I've put together what we have so far, but we'll add yours in, we'll add Lawrence in, maybe we'll add Jets, and then I don't know, can't think of anybody else that would necessarily need to be on there, and then we'll see what happens with the episode about that. But okay, until next time, we will come back with Brandon's top 12 for the next episode. Until then, if you have any lists, topics, or suggestions or comments for me, write into ControlledBurnes with an ES at gmail.com to let me know. And then if you enjoy the show and you want to hear more lists, you can subscribe, follow, like, or review, whatever you can on the places where you listen to your podcast. But for now, and until next time, keep it warm.